I'm Dan Ellsberg. Welcome to my old office building here. I used to work in, I think, the fourth window from the left on the second row up there, and I had my own parking space in the plot right in front of here, which was the highest perquisite you could have, virtually. I was here in '67 when we marched over against the war, Dave Dellinger and others. In fact, I saw Norman Mailer, who was part of that just yesterday. I marched over from the Lincoln Memorial, and then, because I had a Pentagon pass in those days, I went inside. And I stood up. Actually, the main windows up there are the office of the Secretary of Defense, who was Robert McNamara then. And I stood at an adjacent window to McNamara, looking out at the crowd I just marched over with, because I wanted to see the look on his face when the yippies succeeded in levitating the building, which they were working on. Yeah. Actually, it was wonderful to see these doves preceding us over here today. They were fluttering in the breeze in 1976 on the Continental Walk for Peace and Social Justice, which was actually my first arrest here in the Pentagon after the Pentagon Papers.
Thank you,
same day here. And the doves are still with us. When I used to work up there, of course, I dressed like this, and I still do when I get arrested. I always tell people, if you have a tie, I wish you would wear it for the cameras when you get arrested, to show everybody watching that just wearing a tie does not excuse you from the obligations of citizenship. Which includes teaching the people in there how to say no, how to protest. Here, Ken Starr is famous now as the greatest disseminator of pornography in the history of the world. But for real obscenity, you've got to look at the DOD budget, which they just agreed on, they're working on this year. Here we have Newt Gingrich boasting about the fact that he's added $9 billion to a Pentagon budget, to a high Cold War rate 9 years after the Berlin Wall has fallen down there. He's boasting that he's added $9 billion and boasting that in the same budget deal, he cut out school construction. Now, that's obscene. That is obscene. He managed to include in that $9 billion cargo planes to be constructed that the Air Force didn't even want, but in his hometown of Marietta, Georgia. And for Trent Lott, here we're reading in Ken Starr's report about illicit gifts between the president and his lover. You know, a book of poetry, funny sunglasses. And in that budget, we have a helicopter carrier that the Navy didn't even request to be built in Pascagoula, Mississippi for Trent Lott's hometown, the majority. Again, that's real obscenity. Along the same lines, by the way, the reason I'm so happy to be here at this building with you people is there are people in this crowd who, at a War Resisters League meeting back in 1969, gave by their example of going to jail to protest, to refuse to be part of a war that shamed their country. Randy Keeler, Bob Eaton, Randy's here today. If it weren't for their example, it wouldn't have occurred to me to ask myself, and I was working in the Pentagon at that time. I couldn't have asked myself, what could I do to help end this war if I'm willing to go to jail, as I am, along with these people? And I thought of something I could do. I could tell what I knew, tell the truth, give it to the Pentagon, to the Washington Post, the New York Times, 7,000 pages of top secret material. There are people watching us. There are people watching us from those windows now where I used to work. I hope they can hear this loudspeaker, and if they'll go to the rear of those offices, inside those same safe drawers where I used to work, and unload or copy all the evidence of illegal interventions, of unnecessary, wrongful, wasteful, murderous plans, and unload that over to the New York Times or the Post or the Senate, that building will rise 6 feet in the air and spin around. Levitation is best done from the inside, and they can still do it. Again, we're here, as I say, to protest twisted priorities, a press and a Congress that's obsessed with what the president does with his cigars and very little curious, very tolerant, very permissive about what he does with his cruise missiles. Cy Hirsch has a story in the New York Times. Cy Hirsch, who got a Pulitzer Prize for exposing My Lai, has a New Yorker article a couple of weeks ago about the total lack of evidence and reason and real motivation at all for these cruise missile attacks on a pharmaceutical factory in Sudan. He says that the 4 chiefs of staff who work in that building, 4-star generals, were not part of the consultation for that planning. They were kept out of it because, Hirsch says, the president knew they would say no to this stupid and murderous and unnecessary attack, total attack.
Didn't want them to
Yeah, the one man of their, the one colleague who was in on that consulting was General Shelton, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And the reason that he was there was that they were sure he would say yes to it. Now let's remember why he has that job in the new climate. The preceding nominee, I see Luis Ramirez here, who I got arrested with, who set the pace for me at the Pentagon in 19... So here we have a 4-star general who has not learned to say no to the president. When it comes to his actual job, he acts like a 21-year-old intern. He earns his presidential knee pads. We are here to teach General Shelton how and when to say no. That's what I learned from people like Randy Keeler, from Bob Eaton, from the others who went to jail, from Dave McReynolds, who's been at this for a very long time. What I say to the people, the lesson of Vietnam and of many other things for the people in that building listening to us. There are times to say no to a president, even if it does cost you your job, even if you have to go to jail with it. So I'm proud to be with here today, the people who taught me that today, and the others, and thanks for being here. Thank you.
I think Dan is a really good example of how each and every one of us can really make a difference as somebody who really has made a difference. There are people here who have been working on a number of struggles, and we come together here because we know the importance of being here and focusing in on the Pentagon. I'm really pleased to introduce our next speaker, Pam Africa.
All right, Pam.
Pam, as you know, needs no introduction, is with the International Concerned Families and, of course, Friends of Mumia.
Tell it like it is, sister.
On the move. Long live revolution and down with this rotten system. I want to point out, not only does this government bomb, maim, kill over in Japan, raping, robbing, and stealing, but right here in this country, this government bombed 11 men, women, and children for standing up, speaking out about situations just like this, about the bombing of the water, the damming of the air, the bombing with all kind of pollutants and stuff in the air that we gotta breathe. I'm saying when people stand up against this government not only go after them like they're going in, innocent places like Iraq, Iran, Japan, Okinawa, all the different places where these people have murdered, maimed, and killed in our name. And one of the things one of the protesters was talking about on the way here is the fact that this government is powerless without us. I'm saying these armies are made up of our sisters, now our mothers, our brothers, our cousins, our loved ones who have taken upon themselves not only to go to war against us, but to go to war against other countries in the name of us. We must continue to stay in our neighborhoods, educate in our communities. And a day without the Pentagon is not enough. It got to be 7 days without the Pentagon. It got to be 24 hours without the Pentagon.
No!
And it can only happen. It can only happen with us. The Pentagon is supposed to be designed to protect the people. This is not a protection of the people. They say that they go to these places to bring peace. But when in the world have you ever bombed, maimed, raped, killed people to peace? This is cold-blooded murder, and they're doing it in our names. My brother Mario is a member of the Conscientious Objectors. Every program that we have, and we make sure that he is there. While this government will tell you that people are going to war to protect one another, that's not true at all. I'm saying we have got to.
The operation is here somewhere.
The people united will never be defeated. Their technology is what's going to destroy them. And I'm not going to take too much time. We all know what we got to do. But each and every last one of us, when we do an event dealing with welfare, we also got to deal with the fact of this government bombing and maiming and killing around the country. There should not be any, not one. What I was saying is that gotta do is go into our communities. A welfare issue is an issue of dealing with this Pentagon as well. An issue of anything. If you're dealing with the water, the soil, the air, if you're dealing with schools, if you're dealing with any issue, make sure that this issue be a part of. We have got to educate. We cannot leave here saying, well, my plate is full. I can't do no more. It don't take you no time to turn around and speak out about what's going on. Invite a speaker to anything that you're having dealing with this situation. Our lives are on the line. Right now, innocent children are dying over in Iraq, Iran, in the Sudan, and our children have been bombed, in our name. It can't be said enough that we have got to go into our churches, our schools, and protest. Don't let this be a one-day protest. Let's do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Just like we inhale and exhale, that's how we got to do this government exposing the wrongs in it. On the move, before I end and talking about Mumia Abu-Jamal, this government, we need a whole lot more Mumia Abu-Jamals. There was a New York Times ad done for Mumia that was in Friday's newspaper. It was supposed to show nationwide, but the ad is so powerful that they only did it in 3 states. We're asking people to call the New York Times and demand that they reprint this ad and it goes in all the papers just like it was supposed to. We paid $36,000 for this ad so that people can know the truth about Mumia. The ad is just that powerful. I have copies of the ad for anybody who want to give a nickel donation, a dollar donation, 10-cent donation, so that we can make more ads so people can see the truth. Freedom Move 9, who's also in jail for standing up against this government. My family was bombed because we refused to bow down, kiss up to this government. Our position is,
God bless all of you.
Our position is that no matter what you do, and Rodney King was not a freedom fighter. You know, a lot of people who have been shot and in jail are not freedom fighters. So I'm saying if you're going to go to jail, if you're going to die, then damn it, die fighting this country for the wrong that they're doing to each and every last one of us. On the move and be a revolutionary till the day you die.
Good afternoon, my name is Matt Meyer. I work with the War Resistance League and with Resistance in Brooklyn. I'm very pleased today to come here with the first of several solidarity messages. We have people here and messages here from all around the world, from Puerto Rico, from East Timor, and I'm honored to bring a message to you from South Africa. Greetings to all participating in a day without the Pentagon. After our wonderful conference this weekend, I know you will be inspired and energized and full of determination. We must go forward to build a world without war. I regret, this is Dennis Brutus, I regret that I cannot be with you this particular protest, but I'll be with you in many other actions for the road ahead. We say no to war. What do we say? No! We say no to the war machine. We say no to the Pentagon. No! And we say yes to a just social order. And yes to peace. Dennis Brutus, October 19th, 98, the coordinator of the South-South Summit, and I might add, poet laureate of a free South Africa.
Hi, my name's Ellen Davidson, and along with 20 other people this morning, I was arrested blocking the metro to prevent people from coming to work this morning. I have a message of solidarity from the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom joins the War Resisters League at the Pentagon on October 19th to protest the miserable policies of violence, waste, and meanness perpetrated against humanity and the environment, while diverting precious resources needed to sustain families, communities, and nature. We fully support the WRL's call to the people of the U.S. to free ourselves from the Pentagon and to refuse to fund military solutions. With them, we are determined to turn around the priorities of the government, military, and corporate power brokers of this country. We affirm our authority as citizens to be decision makers, and we choose food, housing, and health care, not bombs, missiles, and guns. We stand with the WRL at the Pentagon in Washington today on the side of people, justice, and nonviolence. Thank you.
Hi again, and I'm Joanne Sheehan. I work with the War Resisters League, and I'm the chair of the War Resisters International. I have a statement of support from a friend of ours who hoped to be here today but couldn't, who was here with us also over the weekend at our 75th anniversary conference, and that's Charlie King. Charlie has a question. How many folk singers could you hire for $1.7 billion? The Pentagon needs to kill our dreams, needs to turn us into zombies just to get their bloody work done. They got pretty good at that during the Gulf War. Today, they will spend $1.7 billion, and hardly anyone will notice. But you noticed. And people will notice you. Your dreams will not die. You refuse to be zombies. Today, you are more alive than you have ever been. I want to sing your praises for your courage and your imagination that keep dreams alive. Charlie King, thanks.
Before I introduce the next speaker, I wanted to show you a little piece of paper. You've probably seen some of these. They're green. They have pictures of dead presidents and slaveholders on them. They're very bad karma. And if you have any in your pockets, you should take them out of your pockets and put them into little buckets that are passing around in order that they may be spent on something useful, like supporting the War Resisters League in this event. So if you have any of these, get rid of them. There's people collecting them to take your karma away. Our next speaker used to be a much larger man. He's smaller now. He fasts all the time. Some people wonder if he'll eventually get so small we can't see him. But enough of him is here to see, because while he shrunk in physical size, he grew in moral stature. And this brother has been out at the front line for a long time, telling the truth and making people laugh. He gives a whole new definition to the word stand up for comedians. He stands up for what's right. Dick Gregory.
Thank you. Let me first say we thank and praise God that we have all made it here safely today. And I pray to God that your return and my return will be equally as safe. Secondly, let me say thanks to all of you all that's here for the right reason, and give yourself a hand and let me hear you out there. And before you leave here today, look around, because this is what real power is. What that building and what this silliness represent is not real power. Understand that. They over there drunk with power, drunk with drugs, drunk with alcohol and all that craziness. But we are the ones that have real power. Do you realize if the Pentagon would have had to plan what we're doing today, it would have cost billions of dollars? I mean, think about that. Think about that. They would have been there, they would have had so-called intelligent folks sitting around a desk trying to figure out how they're gonna do it. Look, an idiot could do what they do. You don't even need to be smart to do what they do. And so I say to you who have really made a difference, and it's just a thrill to come out here and see all the folks that's been out here in this movement day after day, year after year. And let me tell you something, we're dealing with the mightiest. They talk about Hitler and them Nazis. These folks in this building here do stuff that would make Hitler blush. Hear me good. I mean, we got an American press, we got television, we got business folks that think with the mentality of animals. And we're the ones that stand up for truth and stand up for justice. We will win. Have no doubt about it. And we don't need to be validated by the New York Times or NBC or CBS or presidents or evil old men and women. Understand that. Us being here today validates us. You know, sometime today, before you go to bed tonight, I want you to think about a big old grinder. And I want you to think of this Pentagon as a grinder, and then think of yourself as a grinder, because grinders do two things. One, it can grind you down to nothing like the Pentagon, or it can polish you up to a light that the whole world have to look at and see. And we represent that grinder that polishes. And there's a whole lot of people guarding today, guarding this filth, guarding this insanity, and they'll be dead and buried, but their spirits one day will know that we are the ones on the right side. We're the ones on the right side. There's something evil. You can, anytime a building that's supposed to be this good for people need these many guards, that's God telling you something evil goes on inside. And the beautiful thing about what we do here, we didn't need no guards to come here. We don't need no guards to watch them, because we're not concerned about what they do. We're concerned about when we can put enough energy together to stop this madness, to stop this insanity. So I say to you today, we represent light. And if you want to know how powerful we are, and if anybody in that Pentagon want to know how powerful we are, go into a dark room and shut the light off, and then pop the light back on. Light wipes out darkness. It don't negotiate with it. It don't argue with it. It don't debate it. And if the Pentagon want to know real power, then they need to go to bed early one night and get up early one morning and watch the sun come out. It's smack nighttime, clean out the sky, and never make a sound. That's what power is about. And that's the power that we bring here. And that's the power that we save. So those of you that's here, go back home and tell the folks that we can win. We don't have to be intimidated by people because all they represent is the shadow of death. They don't even know how to kill people. If they did, it wouldn't cost $1.7 billion. They don't even know how to kill people. We, the living, are the ones that will shine light around this planet. And so I say to you today, I thank you. Every Tuesday night at sundown to Wednesday at sundown, I call on you to fast and pray with me one day a week that this insanity will end. We have the power inside of us. We have the forces inside of us. You attack evil with love. You attack evil with kindness. You attack evil with gentleness, and it would win. They don't have a missile. They don't have a missile. They don't have a bomb. They don't have nothing in their arsenal that can create new life. They ain't nothing but a bunch of punks. They can't create new life at all. Understand that. Understand that. Power is not the ability to kill. Power is the ability to enhance my life. We're the ones that have power. We're the ones that have power. Them missiles they got don't mean nothing. The missiles of love that we bring here, the missiles of unity that we bring here, the missiles of kindness that we bring in, these are the ones that's going to win out. And I tell you something, brothers and sisters, 10 million years from now, if there's anyone on this planet, the only reason America will be remembered will be two things. It'll be remembered by this evil Pentagon, and it will be remembered by Martin Luther King, the peace movement, and this movement that have worked against all odds to make things better, not just in America, but in the whole world. And if it wasn't for them two, the good and the bad, America wouldn't even get a blimp on the screen. We will win this one. We are winning now. I love you. God bless you. Peace be with you, and keep hope alive. Thank you.
And I'm on the staff at the War Resisters League. Many people know that we are one of the ways that the War Resisters League is celebrating its 75th anniversary is bringing the protest back to the Pentagon. And one of the things that's exciting about being here is that we have people from all walks of life, from around the world, from across the country, but in some ways even more significant than that, we have people across 4 generations of protesters who are here to say, we want a day without the Pentagon. And it's appropriate that our next speaker is a veteran activist who has served as a mentor and a colleague and a friend to all of those generations for movements on a whole variety of issues. He went to prison to protest the draft during the Second World War. He subsequently was involved in the struggle for civil rights and has been an activist and a speaker on behalf of the poor and the oppressed in this country and around the world. I asked him a few moments ago if he could count or remember how many times he's been arrested at this building, and he said that he couldn't, but we know that it's been many, many times. He has put his body on the line in support of all of our rights. Please join me in welcoming Dave Dellinger.
Hi. Dick Gregory said all the things that the United States at its best would be remembered for. It'll be remembered for you folks, and it'll be remembered for Dick Gregory. Sometimes I think Dick Gregory and I are getting old because I have been inspired by him for maybe 40 years, which is close to half a century. Now, the U.S. is a superpower, but because it is a superpower, because of things like the Pentagon, it is also 26th in child mortality, which is often related to poverty. And it was a terrible thing, the Vietnam War, in which at its height 200 GIs were coming home in body bags, and all kinds of Vietnamese were getting blown to smithereens. But you should understand that the number of young people, children and young people, who die unnecessarily in the United States every 6 months is greater than the total of the number of GIs who were killed during the entire Vietnam War. Now I want to refer to another speaker, Daniel Ellsberg. And before I do, let me just say that the U.S. today spends $28 billion a year to keep 7,500 nuclear warheads ready for use. Now, Daniel Ellsberg said to me years and years ago that the U.S. has used the nuclear bomb 12 times. I said, gee, are you talking, because I only know of 2 times. So are you talking? They believe in freedom of speech. Note the helicopter up there. Anyway, I said, so are you talking about the number of times that it had explosions and killed people as a result of, from cancer and all the rest of it? And he said, no. If you have a gun and put it at somebody's head and say your money or your life, you may not have to pull the trigger, but you have used the gun. And that's the way the United States uses the nuclear bomb. By now, it's much more than 12 times to control the world. Now, I spoke about the excess Pentagon budget, which doesn't go to helping people medically or helping people be educated or removing poverty, which is one of the crimes, one of the most violent aspects of the American society. But I wonder how many of you know that the U.S. military budget totals more than the 8 next largest military budgets of the countries. The U.S. military budget exceeds the total combined of Russia, Japan, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, China, Italy, and South Korea. So let's take that money. Let's shut down the Pentagon and take that money and put it into health and education and relieving poverty. Now, one other fact that you may not know in detail is that the Pentagon today, 6,500 employees whose job is to sell arms to other countries. And 75% of the sales to third world countries are to opponents of human rights. Fortunately, more and more of us know about the School of Americas. And along with a lot of other people, I am going to be there on November 22nd at Fort Benning, Georgia. But the fact is that the military is used to gain control of other countries. And it is also another fact about the Pentagon, those 6,500 employees, very often they sell the armaments to both sides of a conflict within the third world countries. So why is that? Not just to gain control of the oil and the other resources, which I already said, but the purpose is to make money for the corporations. And so today, 1% of the population in the United States controls more wealth than the bottom 95%. And this was never a democracy, thinking about slavery and genocide of the Indians, but particularly is evident now that the 1% of the population who control the most money control both parties, the Republicans and the others, to, a single party. And they control the government. So that is why we are not organizing, people are not organizing huge demonstrations to plead with the government to change its ways, because it won't. But only by civil disobedience and by grassroots action will we do it. Now, one concluding optimistic note. Charlie Parker, the great jazz musician, once said, "Jazz comes from who you are, where you've been, and what you've learned. If you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn." And that is true of social change. That is true of human equality. That is true of human justice, closeness to nature. So one of the best things in this country today is the people who are not fooled by national elections, not fooled by just lobbying their senator or congressman, but are actually carrying their ideas of human rights and human equality, carrying it into their own lives, their own relationships, their own community. So it's very important that for all the wonderful sister cities that we have, which are very important, it's very important to act locally and think globally. Thank you very much.
As you know, this is the 75th anniversary of the War Resisters League, and I've been asked to make a special announcement. You will find copies of this special anniversary issue of our magazine, The Nonviolent Activist, in the crowd. Many people have copies and would ask you to take multiple copies of them with you home and share them with people in your own communities. The theme of this issue is the future of nonviolence. It includes a series of essays from activists in a variety of issues talking about the role of nonviolence and nonviolent direct action as it relates to the issues that they are working on. All of us connected to WRL are obviously proud of the three-quarter century tradition that we have inherited from the past. But in many ways, it's an insignificant history. The importance of that history and of this day is to rejuvenate the movement, to rebuild the movement, to reconnect the peace movement with other social change forces going on across the country and around the world, to build the next 75 years, the next 150 years of resistance to oppression and militarism. Dave's words made many of those connections. Our next performer is another person who in her own life has made those connections, from supporting the civil rights movement to supporting the peace movement. She was honored earlier this year with the WRL Peace Award, which went to movement musicians as our source of inspiration in good times and bad. Please welcome Odetta.
Hello to you. Welcome to you. I was wondering what to do today, and I guess I should do what I do. And I guess basically that is reinforcing ourselves as individuals and unique, and celebrating the possibility of our getting together and bringing this power and this force up against hideous power and force. And I might ask you a few times to sing along with me, and I know you can sing, I heard you before. And this song is Kumbaya, my Lord. Translated, that is, come by here, my Lord. If you know it, jump right in, sing real loud. You cannot almost sing. So and if somebody looks at you because they figure you're not in the right key, look at them, bless them, and continue singing. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya. Harmonies are welcome. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya. Oh Lord, kumbaya. Someone needs you, Lord. Someone needs you, Lord. Kumbaya. Someone needs you, Lord. Kumbaya. Someone needs you, Lord. Kumbaya. Oh Lord. Kumbaya, kumbaya. You're so low. Sing out. Kumbaya. Kumbaya. Just listen to you. Sing together. Kumbaya. 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 Oh Lord. Kumbaya. Again. Kumbaya. Kumbaya. Kumbaya, 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 kumbaya. Oh Lord, kumbaya. Very good. I was going to school when they had music in school. Maybe we can get it back in. As soon as we renegotiate the monies that are being wasted here. Do you remember Little Red Caboose? Little red caboose, little red caboose behind the train. Ooh, smokestack on its back, chugging down the track. A little red caboose behind the train. Ooh, sing it. Little red caboose, little red caboose, little red caboose behind the train. Ooh, smokestack on its back, chugging down the track. Little red caboose behind the... I think I can. One man's hands can't tear a building down. Two men's hands can't tear a building down. But if 2 and 2 50 make a million, we'll see the day come round. We'll see the day come round. Sing that Pete Seeger song with me, will ya? One man's hands can't tear the building down. Two men's hands can't tear that building down. Two men's hands can't tear the building down. But if 2 and 2 and 2 make a 50, make a million. But if 2 and 2 and 50 make a million, we'll see the day come round. We'll see the day come around. One man's hands can't stop the bombs from falling. One man's hands can't stop the bombs from falling. Oh, 2 men's hands can't stop the bombs from falling. But if 2 and 2 50 make a million, we'll see the day come round. We'll see the day come round. One man's mind can't levitate this building. One man's hands can't levitate this building. 2 men's minds. 2 men's minds can't levitate this building. But if 2 and 2 50 make a million, we'll see the day come round. We'll see the day come around. One man's hands building. One man's hand can't bring the building down. Can't build the building down. 2 men's hands can't bring the building down. But if 2 and 2 and 50 make a million, we'll see the day come round. We'll see the day come around. One grain of sand, one grain of sand in all the world. One grain of sand,
One little boy, one little girl. I love you so. I love you so. I love you so. I love you so. More than you'll ever. Woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind. No, he was crawling. Set on free. Walking and talking with my mind. Set on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind. Set on freedom, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Ain't no harm, it ain't no harm to keep in mind. Set on freedom, well, it ain't no harm to keep in mind. Set on freedom, ain't got no harm to keep your mind. Set on freedom, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Woke up this morning, I woke up this morning with my mind. Oh, it was a set on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. New Hampshire, what's going on? I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh. But a long way from a home, a long way from home. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm walking down this ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. When I'm walking down this freedom, talking down this freedom, walking down this freedom road. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. But I'm walking down this freedom, talking down this freedom, walking down this freedom road. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya, kumbaya,
Kumbaya, kumbaya. Plato's got to hear how much you appreciate her. Our next speaker joins us from Philadelphia. She is the executive director of the Philadelphia Jobs with Peace campaign and one of the national organizers of the Million Woman March. Please greet Barbara Smith.
All right. So there's some noise out here in this place, okay? We're here to shut it down, okay? We're here to shut it down. We're going to shut the Pentagon down. In Philadelphia, I do a lot of work. I want to talk about two areas today. One is with this welfare to work. And we know, but a lot of people who may be watching and listening today think that the stereotypical things that they say about women on welfare are true. But we know that the real welfare is our government, corporations, the banks. They're the ones that's taking all of our money, taking all of our tax dollars off of the poor. They want to say, and they want us to believe, that welfare women are largely black and Latina. That is not true. They want us to believe that welfare women are promiscuous, lazy, and illiterate. Well, I want to tell you who is promiscuous. We are in Washington, D.C., are we not? What a contradiction. They want to say that because we are having our babies and trying to survive out here, that we are the ones. But what is the president doing? And how are they going after him with my tax dollars? If they want to impeach the president, let the Republicans pay for it out of their pockets and get out of my pocket with it. Lazy? This government is lazy. Let's look at the health care system. That's right, there is no health care system. Because they're too doggone lazy to create something where we can all benefit from it. There's no research. We can't afford medications. They're too high and expensive. AIDS is just a joke to the government. They try to capitalize on people who are really suffering in this country and just letting it run rapid. But we know that really amongst the people that there are alternatives to drugs and that there is a real spirit of life living with AIDS. And we have to celebrate and we have to thank those people and we have to support them and not let the government just wipe them away. Now they want to talk about who's illiterate. They want to talk about the education system. Once again, is there an education system? I don't think so. We have young people that I organize with in a community mansion in West Philadelphia. The schools are a joke, what they have there. No arts programs, no real history being taught, nothing around life skills. But I'm out there with these children, and they're getting high. They're getting blunted up every day, okay, because they have nothing else to do. Where they have taken away jobs, they have taken away the only drugstore for this population of 25,000 people and supermarket burned down 5 years ago, and they have not replaced it. Half the homes in this neighborhood are underdeveloped. You would think you were in a third world country. Yet this government wants to say to them that they are the ones that are corrupt, that they are the ones that are illiterate, but they're not. I can tell you this, as much as I talked to those children, they at least knew how to spell potato. Dan Quayle didn't know how to do that. A day without the Pentagon. What a glorious day. A day we could build homes, educate our children, stop building prisons for our children, and release political prisoners. Provide affordable health care, clean the environment, create real jobs to increase the chances of a better quality of life. A day we could create an atmosphere that would be like heaven. Like looking out at all of you angels today is like heaven. Because the days of the Pentagon are over. That is like in a living hell. The Million Man March, if you remember, they said that 1 million black men couldn't come here to Washington, D.C., but they walked right over the White House. 2 years later, they said black women couldn't come together. In Philadelphia, 2.5 million women came to Philadelphia. The Million Youth March, they said they couldn't bring the youth together in New York. Giuliani with his madness, with his craziness, because I was there. And those youth came together, thousands of youth, because they want a life, and they do not want their tax dollars spent on the Pentagon. If they can do it, we can do it. We can shut it down. They said it was an earthquake here today. That earthquake was the War Resisters League shutting it down. And that earthquake is going to be heard all around the world. They're listening to us now. And I say we can shut it down. Military spending concentrates employment among those who are already well off. Most employees of high-tech industries and defense contracts already enjoy higher wages and less unemployment than minorities, low-skilled workers, women, and teenagers. Increasing the military budget while further cutting domestic spending harms those groups that are already suffering the most. So when we go back to our neighborhoods and our communities, we have to organize. We have to reach across class lines. We have to reach across race lines. We have to come together. All of us, the allies that helped those marches, they're here with us today. We have to work together. Our house is on fire. It don't matter what your sexual orientation is. If my house is on fire, help me get the water and put it out. And what we've got to do is collaborate and work together and take this message back. God bless you. Peace out.
Having recently returned from the War Resisters International Triennial in Croatia, please join me in welcoming WRL member, Vietnam Veterans Against the War member, and Black Vets for Social Justice member, Greg Payton.
Amanda! All right. I just want to say it's really overwhelming to see so many people here, to see the past, to see the present, and see the future of where our movement is going. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I was one of the people that were deceived by that building back there to leave here and to go fight a war that I didn't know anything about. And as a result of my involvement in that, I came of age in Vietnam, and I recognized that I had no business fighting that war. And when I came out, I've been organizing, talking to young people ever since about what this establishment is about and the lies and the deceits that they're going to continue to carry against us and our children. Everyone has to remember that even though we're rallying here today, this is not the end. This is just one day of many days that we have to keep the pressure on in order to bring down this Pentagon and this enormous budget that they use for death and destruction all over the world. You know, it's very important to remember that as we speak, our schools are being militarized. Junior ROTC groups are sprouting up all over our schools. It's not unusual to walk downtown and see a bunch of young people walking around with blue and brown uniforms on. It reminds me of 1938 and a country called Germany when they had the brown shirts. So I'm telling you, if you think it can't happen here, just watch and see what's going on. We are moving closer and closer to fascism in the name of trying to avoid terrorism. What they're saying is they're going to take back our rights as people so that they can help us fight terrorism. But the real terrorists are them because they never tell us the truth. They never give us clear-cut answers on what they're doing and how they do it. So I just want to remind everyone that our children are being bombarded daily by this structure, this thing called the Pentagon. As we look, if the military is the third leading sponsor of sports programming. So when you go watch a TV sports program, you're going to see an advertisement for a Budweiser, for a Chevy Camaro, and for the military. And you know, in fact, if in fact they were really commercial people, they would be brought up for false advertisement. It's an adventure, it's a job, education. All these things are non-existent. We know that the number one thing that the military is about is armed forces. So it's time for us to take this battle back to our communities, back to our neighborhoods. We need to talk to our families. We need to organize our families. You know, this is important, like Dave was saying. We need to think globally, but we have to act locally, and we have to do it now. Thank you.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Which would you rather have, smart bombs or smart kids? What would you rather have, war or art? Art! Does everyone here know that the National Endowment for the Arts endowment is equal to the cost of one wing of one B-2 bomber? What do you think about that? And one of the ways to shut down the Pentagon is to stop paying for it. Our next speaker, Claire Hanrahan from the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee, is going to tell us all about that. Please welcome her.
God bless this rain. I'm really energized being here after spending time at the 75th War Resisters League anniversary with some very, very fine people. I'm here to tell you what you already know. We do get what we pay for. We just have to turn around and see where all our money's going. As I speak to you today, I do so mindful of my two older brothers, Daniel and Thomas. As teenage soldiers in Vietnam, they were utterly changed. It was the militarism that distorted their youthful idealism into the service of death. They returned from that war wounded in body and soul with the Agent Orange toxin coursing through their systems. And one after another they died, like so many veterans do. I've refused to pay war taxes since 1981. That's the year I took the pledge. That's when I decided to break the deadly habit of paying for war. Since then, My life has been an experiment in revolutionary poverty because we know it's not just our tax dollars that fuel this Pentagon, but our lifestyles of waste and habitual consumption. This privilege we maintain on the backs of the destitute of the world, and it's upheld by the Pentagon and its deadly force. I'm just one of 10,000 war tax resistors in the United States who openly refuse to pay for war. There are many ways to disengage. I live on the economic edge, and it's not with the destitution of the oppressed. It's a liberating experience and a choice. I've raised a fine daughter. I've survived half a century. I'm a writer and a gardener, and I get around town on my bicycle. I have some allies out here helping me along. I'm self-propelled and self-employed, and in the spirit of Emma Goldman, I'll dance at every chance. Y'all are making it easy. Thank you. We know some war resistors will refuse to file and pay. Some will refuse a portion. Some will refuse to pay any at all. But most are also peace taxpayers. We'll redirect these refused war tax dollars into constructive programs, into over 32 alternative funds throughout the country. Each year we deliver more than $50,000 in these refused taxes to fund community need. The National Campaign for a Peace Tax Fund many of you support is an effort to gain legal recognition of the right of conscience in matters of paying for war. But we cannot wait until Congress says it's okay not to pay for war. The time to break the addiction is now. The bombs are falling now. As much as 50% of every tax dollar working people extracted from your wages is put to the service of death. We know this. And we know that this militarism, according to the writer Dorothy Soley, is the inevitable byproduct of the economic system in which we live. The bombs are falling now. We are waging war against the natural world that we exploit, she has written. We are waging war against our own need to live a simple life. We live in a state of cold war between the rich and the poor are perishing in it. The bombs are falling now. This militarism is killing us. What then shall we do? As we gather here to block the doors of the Pentagon, to declare a day without the Pentagon, to say no business as usual, we must remember that there may be people working here who truthfully believe they are laboring in the service of peace, ensuring our freedom to gather here and resist, to show our dissent.
Could you find out?
As we attempt to block the doors to their workplace, the source of their livelihood, as we ask that they stop participating in this business of death, I ask each of you, when will we stop paying for death? When will we risk our own financial security, our economic privilege to obstruct this business? Who will block the doors to the post office on April 15th when we voluntarily submit our taxes to the IRS, the taxes that fuel this death? We are all responsible. We're all guilty for the militarism that is crushing this world, defiling the good earth, raining death on countless innocents, targeting not the dangerous leaders whom we fear, but the women and children, the old and the infirm, the teenage soldiers. We must withdraw our cooperation. As global citizens, we are complicit in these war crimes. We cannot say we didn't know. How long will you persist in this deadly submission? Leo Tolstoy knew that peace conferences alone cannot free us, but simply, he says, by the conscience of each one of us, forbidding us to participate in violence and asking in amazement, why are we doing that? We peace seekers show more fear of the IRS and its threat to our property and privilege than our willingness to take even a modest financial risk for peace. And many of us who have found employment within our own peace movement are faced with the dilemma of having war taxes deducted from our pay and submitted to the IRS. Why are we doing that? Dorothy Day understood that the war, the racism, the poverty in the world is not going to be changed just by words or demonstrations. It's a question of living our lives in drastically different ways. Our gathering here is powerful. It's important that we make our dissent visible, but this is not enough. We must help each other to break this deadly addiction to the lifestyles that are fueling the devastation and to paying the taxes that uphold this filthy, rotten system. Juanita Nelson, one of the pilgrims of the war tax resistance movement, has been resisting war taxes for over 50 years. That's as long as I've been alive. Juanita reminds us that we must hold up to the light practically every breath that we breathe in terms of nonviolence, in terms of how the practice matches the preachment. Take a deep breath. Claim your freedom. Seize your power. Look your fears in the eye. Step a little closer to the edge. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if they seeded the clouds in order to keep people away from this demo today or not. But we know that despite any efforts to try to keep people away from hearing the messages that are being spoken from this stage and from seeing the wonderful collection of people who are gathered here in attendance, despite any efforts to try to keep that message from going out, we have C-SPAN here broadcasting live across the country everything that's being said from this stage. This morning, some of us were up at 4:15 doing early morning interviews, and we were on the Today Show. And all of Washington, D.C. was so worried that we might interrupt the flow of traffic that we made all of the traffic reports saying that there could be protests at the Pentagon, which still consumes more than $1 billion a day of our tax dollars. I have a couple quick announcements that I need to make. I'd like to ask Meg Starr and Ronnie Fellerath to come to the side of the stage over here. Meg Starr and Ronnie Fellerath. Also, would like to know if there are people in the crowd who have umbrellas that they would be willing to loan to other folks here in case the rain picks up again. And finally, one of the organizers of this event has lost a black denim jacket. The black denim jacket has gone missing from one of the organizers. So if you see one around and you don't know who it belongs to, please let one of us know. One of our concerns about the Pentagon and the presence of U.S. militarism around the world is that it promotes a policy of racism and a policy of divide and conquer. It used to be that the Pentagon justified its budgets with the communist threat. Today, the justification is the terrorist threat. Yet we know that there's no greater terrorism than the threat to destroy the entire planet or the ability to launch missiles anywhere in the world with impunity and kill innocent civilians. But as a piece of evidence about the kind of thinking that goes on in that building that's in front of me, that is behind you, When we negotiated the permit for this space, for legal space on public property, when we negotiated the permit with the Pentagon police, one of the things they told us is that you can't get near the building because Muslims might infiltrate your group and leave explosive devices near the Pentagon. Our next speaker is from an organization that works tirelessly and consistently to debunk those myths and to show that Muslims and Arabs are our brothers and sisters. Please join me in welcoming Kamal Nawash, Legal Director of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Thanks. I guess I was one of those who infiltrated. I just wanted to give a warning earlier. I just wanted to assure people that I really wasn't part of customs. By the way that I was dressed, as I was walking around, I've gotten some funny looks and some funny comments. The only reason I'm dressed like this today is because I was informed to come here at the last moment. ADC wanted to send a lawyer just in case anything happened over here. So I just wanted to assure everyone that I wasn't part of custom. I didn't really have a prepared speech because I came in at the last minute. ADC, we join you in making today, and we support your effort in making today a day without the Pentagon. And while there are many issues around the world where the work of the Pentagon has affected the world or people in a negative way, I want to focus on a couple of issues, not to say that they're more important than others, but to show as an example of the repercussions of having a military policy that's or a foreign policy that's based on militarism. And one of the biggest consequences, or I think one of the biggest horrors in the last 20 years of something that this has done, it's what's going on in Iraq today. And this is something I really want to spend a minute to talk about, because I really do not want anyone to ever forget about that. As of today, since we have 1,200,000 Iraqis that have been killed directly related to sanctions. Directly related to sanctions that at least myself, I blame this institution right here. I do blame the government, the U.S. government. They tell us that the reason they want sanctions is because to supposedly stop someone like Saddam Hussein from having weapons of mass destruction. So we went to him, we told him, okay, well, we have a deal for you. Why don't we lift the economic sanctions and we keep military sanctions on them? This way we can assure that they will never have weapons of mass destruction, but you can be sure that people can eat. Every month, 5,000 people are killed because of lack of food in a country that was one of the wealthiest nations on earth. And they said, no, we can't have that. Why not? No, we just can't have that. And this is a function, or this is a consequence of when you have a Pentagon that really does not care about humanity, or a situation where humanity is a low point on a totem pole. I met one time with a group of people. I met with President Clinton. And he sat there, and like he said in millions of speeches before, well, because I'm a Southerner, I care about, race relations and equality and so on. And then I told him, that really has to apply throughout the whole world. We're an interconnected community now. And in any situation, especially today, see, in any situation, what most people don't understand, when you repress people, or when you torture people, or when you hurt them long enough, sooner or later they're gonna lash out. So if you can have a situation, an example, for example, South Africa, during the apartheid regime, I mean, the black South Africans for many years, they didn't go out demonstrating and throwing stones in the streets because they had nothing better to do. It's because they felt discriminated against. They felt that they were persecuted. Until finally the system is changed now, where at least theoretically you have a country where in the eyes of the law they have equal rights, and you no longer see South Africans out there trying to burn down things. Another situation we have in the world is Israel. I realize there are many Jews here, and I don't mean to offend anyone here. Now, here's a situation where in the last 2 years, they have demolished 1,200 homes for Palestinians, both Christians and Jews and Muslims, saying that we need this land so that we can house Jews from around the world. Now, I agree that I think, Jews who are being persecuted around the world, they should have Israel as a safe haven. But you cannot do it through a racist policy where you make someone else homeless and put this in. So now you have a situation, for example, you take a person, you demolish his home, you take his business, you demolish his business, you put his child in jail, you deprive him of every means of earning a living, and then one day this guy says, what the hell am I living for? I might as well just go blow myself up and take anyone I can take with me, because my life sucks, basically. And then rather than react to the source of these problems, they have contingency plans now to deal with terrorism. And one of the side effects of it is they can't let us come closer. So people like me, they're scared of people like me rather than dealing with the roots of the problem. So all I'm saying, I really honestly, when I stood up here 20 seconds ago, I had no speech, I had no idea, I thought nothing, I didn't know what I wanted to say. But I guess I'm going to conclude by saying this. If you do not, again, it's the world community is getting smaller. With technology the way it is today, it's no longer, Europe is no longer days away. Europe is becoming now, anyway, the world is becoming interconnected. Either you treat everyone at an equal level, you have an equal policy that does not differentiate one over the other, one person over the other. Jew is not better than Muslim, Muslim is not better than Christian, Arab is not better than Jew. You will continue to have problems. Yes, there will be people that will one day go blow themselves up if you push them far enough. Why did these people a few years ago, was it blacks in California, they went and burned down their own neighborhoods? It's not because they wanted to live in charred houses. It's just their way of saying we're frustrated. We want things to change. So maybe we could look at the root of most of the problems rather than always just try to find an answer once a problem arises. That's all. Thanks.
There's a fancy word that gets thrown around a lot on the television by politicians and corporate boardrooms. It's called globalization. But there's an old word that a lot of us use, and it's called imperialism. And as opposed to true internationalism, globalization is really nothing but a fancy new word for an old word that all of us are here to say no to. Our next speaker is someone who speaks with a profound understanding of imperialism, someone who comes from the United States' own colony, Puerto Rico. And to introduce him, I'll ask Meg Starr to come to the microphone.
Hello. Thank you for all being here today. It's a nice day to shut down the Pentagon, a gloomy day, a day the Pentagon deserves, but we don't. I just want to say my affinity group, Resistance from Brooklyn, is joined and honored by being joined by Dave Dellinger and Paul Magno in our effort today to help shut down the Pentagon. And we're dedicating our CD today to the 15 men and women of the Puerto Rican independence movement who are here in this country in prison. Because when they're free, they're going to be working to get the U.S. bases out of Puerto Rico and defeat the U.S. military. So their cause is our cause. So I just wanted to say, in honor of them, there's a Puerto Rican chant where you say the name of a prisoner and you say presente, which means they're with us in our hearts. So if you could help me do that, can you say presente? Presente. Okay. Alejandrina Torres. Presente. Oscar Lopez. Presente. Philip Berrigan. very much. And now I wanted to introduce Luis Nieves Falcon, Dr. Luis Nieves Falcon. Anyone in the Puerto Rican activist movement says, oh yes, he was my professor and he's inspired me so much I became an activist. But he's not just a professor, he is also an activist. He became a lawyer only in order to be able to visit the prisoners and work on their international legal arrangements. And he's from Puerto Rico, and he's from the Organization for International Human Rights in Puerto Rico, Dr. Luis Nieves Falcon.
Puerto Rico had to be present in this meeting against militarism. Because if anyone can talk about the impact, the pervasive impact of militarism, it is Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, there are more military personnel per person than in Spain during the Franco regime. In Puerto Rico, there are more military persons per Puerto Rican than in Nicaragua during the Somoza regime. Why is it that the United States has such a display of military force in Puerto Rico? Because militarism is the hand that supports colonialism in Puerto Rico. Militarism is the hand that maintains oppress the Puerto Ricans. That is why the American militarism in Puerto Rico is all over the island. In Latin America, they might say, we are frightened that the U.S. Marines might come into our country. The Marines are in my country. They are all over my country, 14 American bases in this small island. And in addition to that, the worst surveillance and persecution of any Puerto Rican who backs independence. But in addition to that, Puerto Rico is very important to the American military strategy. From Puerto Rico were sent the forces that invaded Cuba, the forces that invaded Dominican Republic, the forces that invaded Panama. In Puerto Rico were trained the forces that were to operate in Iraq afterwards. So it is not only the suppression of the Puerto Ricans, but it is also the use of Puerto Rico as a springboard in order to suppress freedom in other parts of the country. For that reason, in Puerto Rico, we who fight against militarism have a saying, las bases pa'l carajo. You understand that? Las bases to hell. Las bases pa'l carajo. The bases to hell. That is, we have to put out those bases. Because while the majority of the population is poor, while more than half of the Puerto Ricans have to receive food stamps, you have all these big military expenses. Puerto Rico cannot be any longer a springboard for the American imperialistic activities. But in addition to that, brothers and sisters, it is this military, in combination with the repressive agencies of the United States, that keeps our dissenters, that keeps our opponents in those bastardly years where they are inhumanly treated. We have 16 Puerto Rican political prisoners. We have 6 women. We have 9 men that every day suffer the torture of the incarceration, the most inhuman one. And naturally, this is related to colonialism and militarism. We have to get rid of militarism. We have to get rid of colonialism. And only after we do that, will we be able in Puerto Rico, in the Caribbean, and in Latin America to enjoy peace and justice and tranquility. So the struggle must continue. because we must assure the peace and the tranquility of the region. And with my people, las bases pa'l carajo.
USA out of Puerto Rico. 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 Thank you, Luis. Did you all notice that when Luis started speaking, the sun came out? Get your sunglasses on. That was just a temporary shower to test our festivity here, whether or not we're really strong enough and we're not made of something that's going to go away when the rain comes, for we are here for the long term. I'm Betty Hoover, Director of the American Friends Service Office here in Washington, D.C., and I'm really pleased to be part of this event. We've been around, as many of you know, for a long time, since 1917, working for peace with justice. We have a couple of announcements that I've been handed. Ronnie from the New York City bus, please report to the back of the stage. And also make... Be aware that the peacekeepers are coming around with yellow sheets for sign-in. We want to make sure that we've got record of everyone who's been here today with your name and address so we can keep working together. As I look around, I can connect the dots. I see young and old and people who are from very many different parts of our peace community. And it seems to me that as a people are united, we can never be divided. What do you think? A people united can never be divided. A people united can never be divided. A people united can never be divided. Thank you all for being here today. And I'm going to bring on now a speaker while we have a musical group that's going to be getting ready behind us. So try to ignore all of that movement behind us while we bring on the next speaker, who is David McReynolds. He's with the Socialist Party. He's been a long-term time activist, 40 years or so, working for peace. So give your attention now to David McReynolds.
You are truly the beloved community to sit here through all that rain. I think most of you have heard that Pinochet was arrested yesterday in London. I understand Henry Kissinger is now fearful of traveling anywhere outside of this country. We are here to speak for the health, the well-being, and the freedom of everyone in this country and throughout the world. We are here to set at liberty every mother, son, and daughter trapped inside that building behind you, that they might have lives that are fruitful and useful. Not only do we want to end war, we want those people freed of the burden of carrying on militarism. We are here to speak for the sick and the cold and the hungry in our own land and in every part of our world. Those who could be healed and comforted and fed with the money that is drained by the military. We are here to challenge the nonsense that more than $270 billion is needed to protect this country. This country has demilitarized borders with Canada and Mexico. This country has enormous oceans on the east and the west. By an accident of nature, we are almost totally uninvadable. What in the name of God do we need $270 billion worth of military for? Do you know that the money we spend on the military is more than 7 times the total spent by every country listed as an enemy? Libya, Iran, Iraq, North Korea, Cuba, that deadly island 90 miles off our shore. Add them all up. Our budget is 7 times more than that. And they couldn't get here if they tried. We are a fortunate nation. We are a rich nation that is wasting our money. Why are we spending that money? Why did the Republicans just vote billions of dollars additional, which the Pentagon did not even ask for a Star Wars program, when we cannot even stop planes flying across the Mexican border with marijuana and cocaine? And we're going to spend billions of dollars on a Star Wars program. The reason is because that is billions of dollars in the pockets of the corporate structure. That's our money, our tax money, going into their pockets. Fear is being used. Fear is being used to persuade us to give that money. We are told to be terrified of terrorists. The most terrible, violent act of terrorism that has occurred in the last 10 years in this country was carried out in Oklahoma City by an American citizen, a soldier who was trained by the Pentagon and who fought in the Gulf War and who brought that war home and killed so many in Oklahoma City. That is our own terrorism come home to haunt us. Not Muslims, not Palestinians. We are the ones who have trained the terrorists. We are the nation that terrorizes the planet. There is a reason for this expenditure, and that is, there's a reason for our fear of terrorism, and that is because we have imposed so much on the world. The School of the Americas, which is in this country, and has trained assassins and torturers to be sent forth to Latin America, Central America, Indonesia. No wonder there are those who are afraid that justice might come back and haunt us, that the instructions we have taught might return home. And what drives all of this? What caused this country to send 500,000 people, young men, into Vietnam and cause 2 million people to die? It is a corporate structure. The corporations that are fearful of losing their markets, the corporations that make enormous profits off of the Pentagon budget. Those of us who are here are not just War Resisters League and not just pacifists. There are also a broader coalition, including the aircraft. My friends in the Socialist Party are here all the way from California. The committees of correspondence has endorsed this rally. Solidarity has endorsed this rally. We have a broad base of support, not just those of us who are in the War Resisters League. Let me finally close by saying, as we approach the year 2000, what kind of society do we want? Do we want to use our money to build prisons for our youth rather than educating them? Do we want a government that has been hijacked by the corporations so that, as Dave Dellinger noted, we have no voice any longer in the political process? The corporate structure buys and sells the politicians. Or are we going to say the military budget is a theft from our children? It is a theft from the future. It is a rape of the planet. And we are going to build a movement, sisters and brothers, which can take back America, and to take it back from the corporate structure which has stolen this land from us. And then we shall see that building behind you. That building won't be torn down. Don't tear down property. We're going to transform it into a medical center, which is what it was designed for in the first place. March on.
Do we know what we want? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? We do know what we want. Right now we're going to bring up a group from, actually I've got another announcement to make. Since we are being broadcast nationally, we'd like to give out a couple of telephone numbers. The New York office of the War Resisters League number is 212-228-0450. And since this is the age of electronics, also you can access them by email, wrl@igc.apc.org. I'm going to bring on now a group of activists who are speaking, are working and speaking for women and children particularly. They are Rachel Cornwell is going to be speaking for the Asian Pacific Center for Justice and Peace. Their office is in D.C. Rachel, come on up.
Good afternoon. I especially wanted to speak today about the issue of women and children in Asia and the effect of the U.S. military personnel on their lives there and on the environments and the local economies in Asia. Recently, there have been several high-profile cases of sexual violence against women in Asia by U.S. military personnel. In 1992, Yoon Kumi, who was a bar woman in Korea, was brutally murdered. Her body was mutilated. A Coke bottle was inserted into her womb. An umbrella was inserted into her anus, and washing detergent was poured all over her naked body. In 1995, in Okinawa, a 12-year-old schoolgirl was abducted by 3 military personnel. Her hands and feet and mouth were duct taped, and she was gang raped and then left for dead. These cases are significant because they have galvanized local communities to mobilize against the U.S. military personnel, U.S. military presence. But in the larger picture, they are only 2 of thousands and thousands of acts of violence against women and children, and they're only part of a system of systemic violence that turns young people, young American people, into war machines and encourages them to become part of this system. Especially, we're concerned about young people in our communities of color, where the U.S. military is recruiting very heavily to take the most promising young people and encourage them to be all that they can be. And this is just another system of violence, and we have to work against that. And we have to offer people more opportunities. Last week, the Asia Pacific Center for Justice and Peace was very honored to host 55 women activists from Japan, the Philippines, Korea, and the United States who converged in Washington to bring the issue of U.S. military presence and violence against women to Washington. And we had a briefing in Congress and had meetings at the State Department. No one at the Pentagon would see us, but we are really encouraged that these systems of violence against women and children will end. And as long as there are militaries, there will be My Lais, there will be Nankings, but we can't stop these acts of violence against women and children unless we end military systems. So I think we need to think about redefining security and demilitarizing ourselves and our own ideas about security, the way that we've been taught that security has to be, with guns and bombs and missiles and nuclear weapons. And I think that this is a wonderful start, and we can all work together to revision what security means and how we want to protect our local communities and our women and our children. Thank you.
Yeah, let's repeat that. U.S. Free Asia, U.S. out. Free Asia, U.S. out. Free Asia, U.S. out.
Free Asia, U.S. out. Free Asia, U.S. out. Free Asia, U.S. out. Free Asia, U.S. out. Free Asia.
Okay, I think that we're ready for some music. Mike Wheaton and his group. Oh, that was a nice sound. Mike Wheaton and his group are part of our peace movement here in Washington, D.C. Mike is a second generation, at least, peace activist. So many of you might know Mike's father, Phil Wheaton, who's worked with us on many issues. So Mike comes to us today with a group called Jaleo. They are a Latin, funk, rock, jazz kind of group. I never quite can put a name on them, but I think you'll enjoy them. Let's give a warm welcome to Mike Wheaton and Jaleo.
Hi, how you doing? All right. Well, we're getting a little bit of water dropped on us here, but we're going to try to start something out that you can sing along to.
Y que vive Puerto Rico libre.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that stands beside the water. We shall not be moved. No, 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 no moverán. No, 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 no moverán con un árbol que crece junto al río. No, no moverán. Moving right together, we shall not be moved. Black and white together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that stands beside the water. No, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that stands beside the water. We shall not be moved. No, 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 no moverán. No, 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 no nos moverán con un árbol que crece junto al río. No nos moverán. No, no moverán. No, no moverán.
Thanks.
Selection. We're going to do your spill, right?
Yeah. We'd like to do, one thing we try to do in this band is mix salsa and rock, as you can tell. We'd like to try to do an original song that talks about the powers that be and the things they do wrong. It's called Blue Light.
Okay. Do you need to play with your volume? Can I put it on the floor? Take your... Oh, wait. Blue light, blue night, blue kite.
after drinking with some friends. When the cops pulled him over, said, son, where have you been? The Robert didn't want to answer. His drunken attitude came out. None of your damn business, he said. It's when the cops beat him to the ground. Yeah, and the law falls down again. Such a bendable. Yeah, the law falls down again, making every last one of us look like a fool. Moonlight falling down on black water. There don't seem to be no angels coming down like they ought to. Moonlight falling down on black water. There don't seem to be no angels coming down like they ought to, down like they ought to. Sarah was waiting for her ride. She'd been hanging with Christine when she got talking to this guy. All of a sudden turned mean. He told the cops he'd hardly met her when she started coming on. Cops told Sarah to forget it. She shouldn't string those boys along. Yeah, and the law falls down again. Such a bendable rule. Yeah, the law falls down again, making every last one of us look like a fool. Moonlight falling down on black water. There don't seem to be no angels coming down like they ought to. Moonlight falling down on black water. There don't seem to be no angels coming down like they ought to, down like they ought to. More monitor in the, more piano in the monitors. More piano in the monitors. Diana's working for minimum wages, but she hungry mouths to feed. Living downwind from the pulp mill, hell, they can hardly breathe. Factory said they met the standard, how things could improve. Diana can't afford a lawyer, and the company suggests she move. Yeah, and the law falls down again, such a bendable rule. Yeah, the law falls down again, every last one of us look like a fool. Moonlight falling down on black water. There don't seem to be no angels coming down like they ought to. Moonlight falling down on black water. There don't seem to be no angels coming down like they ought to, down like they ought to be. We don't need a bunch of cops to bust us. Don't need no experts to take a stand. We just want a little bit of justice. justice, clap your hands. You want some mercy, just clap your hands.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Una canción por Violeta Parra.
I don't know if anybody noticed. Well, I'm sure you did. We announced it at the concert yesterday, and I'm sure you've heard it by now. General Pinochet of Chile was arrested in England. We'd like to dedicate a couple of songs to that. One is to Violeta Parra, who was a Chilean folk singer during that time period. A song called Thanks to Life, Gracias a la Vida.
Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio dos luceros que cuando los abro perfecto distingo lo negro del blanco y el alto cielo, su fondo estrellado en las multitudes, el que yo amo. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la marcha de mi pie cansado, con ellos anduve ciudades y charcos, vallas, desiertos, montañas y llanos, y la casa tuya, tu calle y tu patio. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio el corazón que gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la risa y me ha dado el llanto, así yo distingo dicho de quebranto los dos materiales que forman mi canto, y el canto de ustedes es el mismo canto, y el canto de de todos que es mi propio canto. Gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida. Gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida.
We might need people to hold the tent down.
Thank you.
It's going to go flying away from us.
Pop us in the head. Thanks.
Amongst other things.
Nice guys.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias. Well, getting a little bit more rain here. Trying to hold up. There's another song. This time we're going to sing a little song for the generals here. This is called Ese General, and the translation is that general that fools you, that kills you, that eats you. Rise up, rise up. We've got the ability to rise up against them.
That's right.
Ese general que te engaña, que te mata, que te muerde morena. Ese general que te engaña, que te mata, que te muerde morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas. Ese dictador que te engaña, que te mata, que te muerde morena. Ese dictador que te engaña, que te mata, que te muerde morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas. No es el pan, no es el pueblo, esos son los gringos que vienen a sembrar la guerra morena. No es el pan, no es el pueblo, esos son los generales que vienen a sembrar la guerra morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas. Ese dictador que te engaña, que te mata, que te muerde morena. Ese dictador que te engaña, que te mata, que te muerde morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas. No es el pan, no es el pueblo, esos son los yanquis que vienen a sembrar la guerra morena. No es el pan, no es el pueblo, esos son los militares que vienen a sembrar la guerra morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas morena. Levántate, levántate, América le tiene ganas.
We're going to vary a little bit from playing stuff that... We're going to play an original tune here.
Anything, Amy.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Wanna kiss every strand of her braided hair, but it's so hard to catch Amy unaware. Lying beside her, I say I love her so. She turns away and tells me to let it go. I tell her there's something she's gotta believe. I didn't fall in love for her, I fell in love for me. First saw her behind the counter of a donut king. Yeah, she looks like an angel with a broken wing. Hey, anything, Amy, anything, anything, Amy, anything, any need that needs to be filled, any desire that can't be killed. Anything, Amy. Bob lit out on her about a year ago, chasing stock cars up in the Poconos. She's a kids with her mother on Bleecker Street. She work a double shift trying to make ends meet. She's down sometimes, thinks she's gone around the bend. She says she don't need love, she love a friend. I say okay, we'll see what the next day brings. God, she looks like an angel with a broken wing. Hey, anything, Amy, anything, anything, Amy, anything, any need that needs to be filled, any desire that can't be killed. Anything, Amy. What do I know? What do I know about love? I know mistakes can shake the soul, and you wake up confused and cold. Oh, what do I know? I know that love's just like it don't change a thing. Said everything, Amy. What do I know? What do I know about love? I know mistakes can shake the soul. Wake up confused and cold. Oh, what do I know? I know that love's just like you don't change a thing. Everything, Amy. refuses, she's falling for them all. She's afraid someday I'll forget to call. She says I'm a nice boy, but I don't understand. Before you can walk, you gotta learn to stand. Ah, come on, Amy, I never planned to leave. Fell in love with you, for me, you gotta believe. I want you to know whatever the next day brings, I'll be watching the wind when it mends your ways. Hey. Anything, Amy. Anything, Amy. Any need that needs to be filled, any desire that can't be killed.
I'd like to introduce the band members. Over here on drums,
Do Brazil.
we have Alejandro Licini. I met Alejandro about 5 years ago, and he's the man. On bass, we have Adriana Lastra de Puerto Rico. And I met her about 5 years ago, and she's the woman. And I'm Mike Wheaton, de Santo Domingo.
And he writes it all, he does it all, he plays it all. You ain't seen him play nothing yet.
Well, I hope you don't mind all the songs in Spanish. We're gonna do one that you know anyway, so whether you speak it or not, you know this tune.
Sincero, de donde crece la palma. Yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crece la palma. Y antes de morir me quiero echar mis versos del alma. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera, Guantanamera. De la tierra quiero yo mi suerte echar, con los pobres de la tierra quiero yo mi suerte echar. El arroyo de la sierra me complace más que el mar. Guantanamera, negrita mi amor, Guajira, Guantanamera, dame tu corazón, Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. verso es de un verde claro y un carmín encendido. Mi verso es de un verde claro y un carmín encendido. Mi verso es de un ciervo herido que en el monte busca amparo. ¡Ay, Guantanamera! Guajira, Guantanamera. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. Guajira, Guantanamera. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. Guantanamera, negrita mi amor. Guajira, Guantanamera, dame tu corazón. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. Última vez. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. Guantanamera, Guajira, una vez más. Ay, Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera.
Para los hombres sinceros.
Okay, now that everybody's having fun and dancing, we'll do a little bit more of this. This is another original song the bass player cooked up a couple of weeks ago.
Isn't it fun how music soothes?
Para bailar la bamba, para bailar la bamba se necesita una poca de gracia, un poquito de gracia y otra cosita. Y arriba, y arriba, ay arriba, y arriba, y arriba iré. Por ti seré, por ti seré. Baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba. Una vez que te dije, una vez que te dije que era bonita, se te puso la cara. Se te puso la cara coloradita. Y arriba, y arriba,
¡Arriba!
ay arriba, y arriba, y arriba iré. No soy marinero,
No soy marinero.
por ti seré, por ti seré. Baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba. Triana. Necesito una escalera grande y otra chiquita, y arriba, ay, arriba, y arriba iré. Yo no soy marinero, no soy marihuanero, por ti seré, por ti seré, por ti seré. Baila, bamba. 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 Baila, bamba.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that wonderful music. My name is Melissa Jameson. I'm from the War Resisters League. I'm also a member of the New Jersey War Resisters Local, the Root and Branch Collective. And I'm in, what am I? Okay, hi. So our local Root and Branch Collective is here from New Jersey, and I'm very honored to introduce a member of our local Root and Branch, as well as a member of the War Resisters League Executive Committee, Sachio Ko-yin, who did a direct action for disarmament this past August. Thank you very much. Here's Sachio.
Hello there, friends. I apologize if my voice is not doing too well today. I see there's some interesting things happening way back there. I wonder what's happening, but I'm sure maybe we'll be able to figure that out a little bit later. I just wanted to tell you that on August 6th, I went with my friend Daniel Seekin to a missile silo, a Minuteman III missile silo. And at that place, we drew a broken rifle on the silo lid, and we painted a mural on the silo lid, and in full solidarity with this upcoming action of the Day Without the Pentagon, we began not out of a spirit of anger, not out of a spirit of vengeance, but out of a spirit of creation, out of a spirit of beginning a process of disarmament. With our gentle sledgehammers, we began to symbolically disarm this weapon of indiscriminate mass destruction. And as we ceremonially beat with our sledgehammers this Minuteman III, we had a sense of profound peace and a sense of perhaps the beginning of real disarmament. So, to make a long story short, we're expecting our trial on November 2nd to take place. Perhaps we will have as much as 6.5 years in prison due to a sabotage charge, which might be filed with the grand jury even as we speak. This has brought about wonderful opportunities for speaking in Colorado. In fact, even to the Air Force Academy, we will be speaking on that day as soon as I get back on the 21st. So it's been a wonderful process. And again, in our statement, we mentioned the Day Without the Pentagon, and this day is of such a great value and such importance. And again, I see such amazing things happening way back there. I guess we'll have to wonder to ourselves, what's happening? Anyway, thank you so much.
I don't know.
other speakers, and so to the extent that people can keep one eye on what's going on back there, and we'll have someone come up and let us know, and also pay some attention to the speakers who are coming up, we would appreciate it. People do know that folks have a range of different ways to protest injustice, and we know that some of the folks who are planning to come to this event were planning to do civil disobedience. We had an action this morning, which people talked about earlier, and it looks like some of the groups are also doing some actions right now. I want to tell you who's coming up next in terms of speakers, but I have one little brief announcement. If any of the folks within the sound of my voice are planning to ride home with Mario Hardy, they need to come to the backstage area. Also want to let people know to please try to pick up after yourselves so that the crew of folks that we have available for the rest of the afternoon, for the next hour or so, doesn't have to spend another hour after that, so we really appreciate that. We have coming up next someone who's come from what is now my hometown of New York City. He's an attorney. He's also active with the local chapter of the National Association of Korean Americans. John Kim. Following Kim will be Sachiko Mitsunaga, who has come to us from Linking Peace and Life all the way from Japan. And following her, Sonia Ostrom from Peace Action and also from Abolition 2000. So John Kim, followed by Sachiko Mitsunaga and Sonia Ostrom.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Some are joining the civil disobedience action, but those who wanna, just listen to the speeches, you're welcome to listen to my speech. As a Korean American, as an American veteran, I'm very honored to be here today, speak on issues of war and peace and militarism. I'm especially thankful to World Legislative League for organizing today's rally. I think it's a great peace rally, and I'm thankful for their all efforts they have done for today's activity. By the way, when I was coming down, I was called by David Letterman, and he asked me, can I think of a top 10 for Pentagon? And I thought about something about the top 10 for the Pentagon. Number 10, Pentagon is the largest polluter in the world. Number 9, the biggest pig, the biggest pig in the world. Number 8, the worst source of terrorism. Number 7, the cesspool of racism. Number 6, the worst pimp for military prostitution around the world. Number 5, the biggest merchant of death. Number 4, the most ferocious aggression. Number 3, the best friend of the military dictatorship. Number 2, the worst manufacturer of weapons of mass destruction. Number 1, the world champion of militarism and military waste. As you know, the Pentagon process recently asked for more military money. And surprisingly, the US Congress and the President agreed to give about $9 billion more for the Pentagon. Isn't this a great tragedy? This outrageous pork barrel giveaway of our tax money to the military industrial complex in this country at the time when the Cold War is over and we are only the remaining superpower in the world, proves again that the military industrial complex is the real rulers and masters of America today. How much Eisenhower was right when he warned the excessive military power of American military industrial complex when he stepped down from the presidency some 40 years ago, and how sad he would be today in looking at the incredible waste of Pentagon and its a happy bad partner, the Republican Party. According to a report of the Center for Defense Information, our annual military spending is about $500 billion if we include our foreign military sale, veterans benefits, and our interest on the past military spending. To finance this huge military spending and achieve a balanced budget at the same time, the Republican-controlled Congress has been cutting back on our basic benefits for the poor, disabled, and the children, raising taxes on the working families and the legal immigrants as well. Are you aware that the INS recently jacked up its various application fees anywhere from 30% to 400%? The naturalization application fee will go up by 150% in coming January, from present $95 to $250. This is nothing more than another way of raising taxes upon the most powerless, vulnerable people in this country. This cowardly attack of the establishment on the working poor, disabled, and the immigrants is not surprising at all if we look at the past ugly history of what the Uncle Sam has done in the third world. How many bombs did we drop on Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos? How many Asian people did we kill in cold blood in the name of national security? Just in the Korean War alone, US military dropped more bombs on Korea than all the American bombs dropped during the World War II. And the Pentagon is still keeping about 40,000 American GIs in South Korea today, some 45 years after the ceasefire of the Korean War. Do you know how much we spend for our military presence in Korea? Some said it's $3 billion a year, but the true cost is $23 billion a year. If we add our military cost for Japan, the total spending for the Pentagon in maintaining the status quo in the East Asia is about $50 billion a year. And there are many sins of the Pentagon that you can name it. But one of the deadliest sins of the Pentagon is that it has refused to sign the landmine treaty that has been signed by more than 130 nations around the world. And the reason they say they refuse to sign this landmine treaty is that they want to protect the lives of American GIs in South Korea. Now, does this mean the Korean people's life is less worthy than American GIs? And this is a classic example of American racism. That is in the background of American militarism. By refusing to sign this landmine treaty, we are becoming another outlaw, a local nation in the international community. Landmine is nothing more than another weapon of mass destruction in slow motion. How can we condemn Iraq for its development of weapons of mass destruction, while we are keeping and threatening the use of all kinds of weapons of mass destruction. Pentagon's refusal to sign the landmine treaty is nothing more than another military chauvinism. Okay, in summing up, that I would like to say that the history teaches us that we cannot overcome American racism without subduing American militarism. And I'm deeply moved that there are many courageous American peace activists today who are willing to stand up against the dark forces of American militarism. And you are good examples of such just forces for peace in this world. I applaud Father Berrigan, Daniel Berrigan, and other pro-share brothers and sisters. I applaud those peace activists who are arrested in trying to shut down the School of Americas. I applaud those peace activists who were arrested this morning at the Pentagon. I also applaud those 53 anti-landmine peace activists who were arrested on October 7 in blocking the entrance to the Alliant Tech system in Minnesota. Alliant Tech is the largest producer and contract with the Pentagon in producing anti-personnel landmines. On October 8, the next day, 19 more people were arrested at the Alliant Corporation entrance. Among those arrested were 3 juveniles and 3 sisters of mercy, aged 72, 73, and 74. Let's give a hand to these courageous and just warriors. And in closing, I would like to make some suggestions. First, let's make this kind of anti-military peace rally an annual event. Second, next year, let's meet at the Capitol Hill first and have a rally there and then march to Pentagon. Number 3, let's build up anti-military, anti-racist peace coalition at the home and abroad. Number 4, let's learn more people for U.S. Congress who believe in peace and justice. We cannot leave our Congress to those shameless, greedy, corrupted hawks who sell out to the military-industrial complex. Number 5, let's set up a national legal defense fund in support of those who engage in civil disobedience. Down with the U.S. militarism. Down with the Pentagon. Down with the U.S. racism. Cut the military budget in half. Bring our boys home. Peace dividend now. Peace now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Just a moment, please. My name is Sachiko Mitsunaga. I came from Japan to attend a day without a Pentagon with Nagi Fujita as the delegates of Linking Peace and Life. It's my great pleasure to give an address to you on behalf of the Chairman Toshiki Mameta and our 400 members. First of all, I'd like to express our sincere support to your goal and actions to fight against military armaments and violence, which create nothing for human peace and happiness. Your movement in the United States has similar concerns with our movement in Japan. Please understand that today's military strength of Japan has been built up with the strong support of the United States. After the World War II, Japan resumed its armaments in 1950, and now our troops called Self-Defense Force has grown up to be the strongest army in Asia with high-tech equipment on the same level of the US forces without nuclear weapons. Also, Japan is spending the second largest military budget in the world. In April 1996, President Clinton and Prime Minister Hashimoto issued the Joint Declaration on Security Treaty to redefine the Joint Declaration on Security to redefine the US-Japan Security Treaty and agreed to revise its old guidelines. And in September 1997, the revised guideline for US-Japan defense cooperation was released. The content of the text was clearly a war manual. Furthermore, in September 1998, last month, both governments agreed on proceeding toward conducting joint research on developing the Theater Missile Defense System, TMD system, giving North Korea's threat as an excuse. All of them are violation of the Constitution of Japan, which declares the renunciation of war. Relating the new guidelines, a bill called Situation in Areas Surrounding Japan has already been introduced in the Diet in order to legalize all kinds of logistic support and military cooperation of Japan. It is evident that our government aims to make it possible to dispatch Japanese troops abroad at any time, anywhere by this legislation. However, on the other hand, it is also true that our self-defense force has never participated in any actual fighting since its formation in 1950. And also, they have never killed anyone, even just only one man for this half a century. I think this is completely different from your troops. It is because the Constitution, the renunciation of war, existed in our background. This is a prize of peace-loving people in Japan. So we must not allow passage of any guidelines-related bills in this coming session on the Diet. In order to block passage of the bill, Situation of Areas Surrounding Japan, we will hold a joint rally on October 21st in Tokyo and Osaka with some labor unions and peace groups. In this situation, removal of US bases from Japan, especially from Okinawa, has become much more essential and indispensable to stop US-Japan military actions. So, your peace actions, like a day without a Pentagon, are extremely encouraging for Japanese people who are struggling against our government, because the US government is the best supporter and the best partner of our government, which is going to send troops overseas and use the armed force. That's why we came here, Pentagon, today. In addition to this armament, we have another important duty in Japan, that is, to make our government to take their responsibility for Japan's past invasion of Asia-Pacific region before and during the World War II, and to realize full apology and compensation to all victims, because Japanese government has never taken any responsibility for their war crimes, such as sexual slavery of so-called comfort women, forced labor, Nanjing massacre, medical experiments by Unit 731, maltreatment of prisoners of wars, poison gas, chemical weapons, and so on. These crimes have already been denounced in the international society, and more than 20 lawsuits have been filed to demand the government's apology and state compensation for Korean, Chinese, and other Asian victims. Our group has also been supporting some suits on forced labor of drafted Koreans. However, Japanese government still refuses all claims from these victims. We think Japan must pledge not to repeat invasion of any countries by making sincere apology and full individual compensation for their past war crimes. Linking the issue of disarmament with the issue of war responsibility is a policy of a movement of linking peace and life. Brothers and sisters, our American friends, how nice to hear that the grassroots anti-war peace movements exist in both sides of the Pacific Ocean. Let's keep up good fight to knock down the US-Japan military alliance, and let's make a great advance for peace and justice together. Thank you. Kamara!
Hi, my name is Sonia Ostrom, and I'm representing two groups today. I'm representing Peace Action, and I'm representing Abolition 2000. So you'll notice I do have two heads. And what I do believe in is complete nuclear disarmament. And we have to work for that. I think if there's nothing else that's going to happen in the year 2000, it's work that Abolition 2000 is doing, and the rest, they have 1,000 organizations in the network around the world. And the time has come to put the genie back in the bottle. It's time to get rid of all nuclear weapons all over the world. When Pakistan and India tested, they tested because they had been trying to get the United States to sign up to do something, even a little bit, to show that they would be working toward nuclear abolition. And they couldn't get them to do it. Now, they're the ones who are saying, yeah, we'll sign the treaty, we'll do it. We signed a non-proliferation treaty, and what do? We spend money on stockpile stewardship. We pretend that we have to keep our stockpile up to date. And so what we do is spend billions of dollars to make sure that we have lab equipment, to do testing that we call subcritical testing, so we cheat and lie and steal and do everything wrong and get away with it and spend billions of dollars that could be used, as you all know, for really good purposes in this world. There's no reason why we should allow this country to rule the world and to rule the world with its nuclear power. We've got to get rid of it, and we've got to get rid of it now. Jacques Cousteau said that if chemical weapons and biological weapons are weapons of evil, then certainly nuclear weapons are the most dangerous weapons of all, and they must be gotten rid of. So that's where we're at, and we're working toward the year 2000 to have what we call a nuclear convention. That is, we know that by the year 2000 we're not going to get rid of nuclear weapons, no matter what we do today. But the time has come, and we have enough real interest throughout the world. 87% of the United States says we don't want nuclear weapons, and yet the government doesn't listen, because they make so much money on it. And they have been putting billions into Livermore labs so that, again, they can do more testing and come up with bigger and more horrible kinds of weapons. And we've got to stop that. We really must do something. Every organization that's here should be joining Abolition 2000 because it's a network. It's not an organization. It really is just every group saying, yes, we agree, we want to get rid of nuclear weapons. That's the first and primary aim of what's happening in the world today. And not just here in this country, but all over. We know that there is no excuse that we cannot use such weapons, that it is totally immoral, and that we certainly can't tell other countries that they can't have them while we keep them, and we keep them on the alert. And right now, with the problem of what's going to happen with computers, in the year 2000, it's pretty frightening because we could have an accident just because of the change of K2000. 52K, right. And when that happens, we know that the government has already said, well, we'll treat it as a tornado. And if that doesn't work, well, we might destroy the world. And they think it's a joke, but it's not a joke. And we really do have to do something about seeing to it that there are no more nuclear weapons. That kind of power does not give us hope. That kind of power does not feed children all over the world. That kind of power does not put books in the classroom, paint on the walls so this government can say that it's all right not to paint and fix up schools. And then we complain when our children don't do well. How can they do well sitting on broken chairs in filthy classrooms? And then we expect them to learn? They can't learn under those conditions, and no one should be expected to. And we have to learn where our priorities really are and do something about them. We have got to get rid of all nuclear weapons. Thank you.
I have an update. People will recall that 23 people expressing their right to dissent in the United States, expressing their outrage at the abusive military spending at the Pentagon, and expressing their real concern about growing militarism. This morning, 23 people were arrested doing civil disobedience actions. I have information that back there this afternoon, 7 more people were arrested. People are continuing to protest back there. Some folks are starting to come back. And so we want to make sure that we continue the program here. In addition, remember that everyone who comes up here speaking is not just speaking to whoever's here. We're speaking to whoever is at home watching on C-SPAN. So we've got that national audience. And for that reason, we're going to go ahead and continue the program. The next speakers up, I believe, are the most important here. You know, very often people will say youth are our future. Youth are not our future because they're here already. They're providing leadership, they're providing inspiration and strong words. And one of the most active groups of young people fighting war and militarism in the U.S. are people in Youth Peace, and they're coming up next.
Good afternoon.
My name is Derek Francis, and I'm helping to represent Youth Peace. Thank you. Got it. We are Youth Peace. We are a national group of youth working to end militarism, racism, sexism, homophobia, and classism through nonviolent action. We serve as a microphone to amplify the voices of our peers. We say violence is not a solution to anything, and so we work to provide our peers with nonviolent alternatives. Today we affirm the strength and truth in our own voices and our steadfastness, and hope as youth tells us that our voices will be responded to with action. When we are small, we often ask the question, why, without reservation. As we grow older, we are taught to abandon one ability to question in favor of blind acceptance. As Youth Peace, the questions we ask increase every day.
Why do we care more about oil than Iraqi children?
Why do we continue to allow the military to use youth to kill and be killed, carrying out their racist economic policies?
Why do we have money to spend on JROTC in our schools? Meanwhile, our schools are unsafe, crumbling, our books are out of date, and our teachers are untrained.
Why are people of color like James Byrne still being murdered by racism?
Why are women still being battered, raped, and murdered by their male partners?
Why are youth allowed to be brutalized, criminalized, and repressed by racist police?
And I'd like to know why young people and old people and people in between are being met with such brutal force up at the Pentagon when they're showing nonviolent protest, exercising their democratic rights to free speech. It's because this institution trains people to meet force with force, to kill, and we need to teach people in this country to love, to have an open mind, to show understanding, instead of close your eyes and smack you down.
All right, so those are our questions. We know that this government and the Pentagon and the military and the system of violence out there doesn't provide us with any of those answers. We know that they don't have anything we need inside that building. We know that the answers to our questions, we're only going to find them in the action that we're taking here today, and that the action you all are going to go home and do in your communities after today. Word. As Youth Peace, we're rejecting the system of violence that's murdering us around the world, and we've turned our hearts and our minds into demilitarized zones so we can go out and do this work free of all the oppression around us. And we're going to continue to agitate and organize until it's all over. We are Youth Peace. We are not only the future, we are also the present, and we're demanding change now.
Please remember that last line. They are not just the future, they are the now. So in your organizations, don't treat young people as if when y'all grow up, we'll deal with you. Deal with them now. You'll find that's where the leadership is. We have just a couple more speakers, and I want to speak to the importance of information as power, of knowledge as power. We've got a national audience today with this live broadcast by C-SPAN. We've got a number of other news outlets here and videotape and radio and audio tapes going around. But it's important also that we have people rooted in the movement creating the information that goes out around the country and around the world. Our next speaker is a journalist who focuses on human rights, on peace and nonviolence issues, and he has some inspiring words for you. Alan Nair.
Thank you. Right now inside the Pentagon and in hundreds of American bases, U.S. bases around the world, there are hundreds of thousands of citizens of the United States who are working inside the American military apparatus. There are also many over at the CIA, inside the State Department. There are many people inside these bases and buildings who joined the military, who signed up, because I think they wanted to fight for freedom, defend the country, stand up for the underdog. And these are noble goals. If you asked most Americans what the United States stands for overseas, many would say, well, that's what we do. When injustice is being done when the weak are being crushed by the strong, the United States comes in to help. And maybe sometimes we try to help too much, but that's the mission. We try to bring to people overseas freedom and civil liberties as people enjoy them here. Now that's a great idea. It would be a good thing if it were true. But unfortunately, sadly, and lethally for many people around the world, that is not, in fact, the work that is being done by the Pentagon, the CIA, and the State Department in case after case. It's not that the ideals that so many Americans believe in, freedom, justice, are wrong. Those are right. The problem is that those who run the United States, those who make the policy, President Clinton, the Secretaries of State and Defense, the leadership of Congress, have continued a long-standing practice of the United States of being willing to use violence, terror, torture, and massacre against people in countless countries because they stand up for freedom, because they ask for justice, because they criticize regimes that are allies of Washington. In East Timor, a small nation between Australia and Indonesia, in 1975, the people of Timor who were seeking independence after years of colonial domination were suddenly confronted by American C-130s flying over the beaches of Dili, the capital of East Timor. Out of those planes, there dropped Indonesian military paratroops armed with freshly supplied U.S. machine guns and M16s. They were landing on the beaches of Timor because just 16 hours before, President Gerald Ford and Henry Kissinger had given the go-ahead to Suharto, the military dictator of neighboring Indonesia, to stage this invasion of East Timor. And as President Ford stood at Pearl Harbor, commemorating Pearl Harbor Day, for this was on December 7th, 1975, as he was giving a speech saying that never again should the world tolerate sneak attacks. The U.S. must be the guarantor of peace in Asia. As this was happening, those U.S. armed, those U.S. sanctioned, those U.S. financed Indonesian ABRI troops were sweeping into the homes of Dili and dragging people out, bringing them down to the harbor, down to the Aria Branca, the white sand beach, and were shooting them into the sea with those freshly supplied U.S. weapons. That was the beginning of what is perhaps the most intensive proportional genocide since the Nazis. A third of the population of East Timor has been massacred since then by the Indonesian armed forces, which have been armed, financed, and politically backed by every administration from Ford up through Clinton. That occupation continues to this day. To this day, the U.S. continues to block the United Nations from taking action to enforce the two United Nations Security Council resolutions that call on Indonesia to withdraw, the Indonesian government to withdraw its troops without delay. In 1991, I happened to have the chance that few citizens of this country have to witness things from the other end of the M16. You could say that we're linked to people in places like East Timor by a metaphorical M16. We're here at the trigger end where the decisions get made inside buildings like the Pentagon as to whether the bullet gets pulled. In Timor, they're at the exit end where the bullet comes out. On November 12 in 91, the Timorese held a procession from the Motel Catholic Church, the Santa Cruz Cemetery on the other side of town. Thousands of people came out, led by young people waving banners that defended their church, that called for freedom, that talked about the 200,000 dead. There were nuns at the head of the procession singing hymns, and when they got to the cemetery, The ABRI, the Indonesian armed forces, marched on them in formation, 12 to 15 abreast, wielding American M16s. They swept upon the crowd, which was hemmed in by the cemetery walls, and they opened fire on that crowd. They gunned the people down because they were gathered in protest, as we're gathered here. And they didn't stop until that road was slick with blood. I was standing there in the middle of it. I was there with Amy Goodman from WBAI Pacifica Radio. We were standing between the soldiers and the Timorese. But they just enveloped us, swept around us, and opened fire. And then, as they were continuing to slaughter the Timorese, the soldiers put the rifles to our heads, 7 or 8 of them. There were hundreds, perhaps thousands of troops there in all. It seemed they were deciding whether to execute us. But it seems that the thing that turned the tide was when we convinced them that we were from the United States, the same country their weapons were from. I think they realized that there might be trouble. There might be a political price to pay if you executed Americans. It's the U.S., after all, that was the patron of the Suharto dictatorship, that is to this day the patron of the ABRI, which continues to repress and terrorize inside Indonesia, as well as occupied Timor. They'd never paid a price for killing Timorese. They were slaughtering the Timorese right in front of us. But perhaps they would be trouble if they killed Americans. So they lifted the rifles from our heads. We were able to escape from the scene. Later that day, report the massacre to the outside world. But the Timorese were trapped on the road, at least 271 dead. If this were an exception, it would be one thing. But unfortunately, this is the rule. Dozens upon dozens of other examples of where the U.S. foreign policy and military establishment, particularly its paramilitary sector, a string of some 180 military bases, including places like the School of the Americas, but the School of the Americas is also only the beginning. At places like Camp Peary in Virginia, Quantico in Virginia, where intelligence and military operatives from around the world are brought in and given training, where U.S. operatives are sent out to places like Guatemala, where for decades the U.S. has armed and trained and financed the GEDOS, the G2, the Guatemalan Military Intelligence Service, that has coordinated the assassinations and disappearances that, together with the massacres in the Mayan highlands, have claimed some 120,000 lives. At the G2 base in Huehuetenango in the northwest, they actually have a crematorium to dispose of the bodies, the tortured bodies. But that didn't stop the CIA, that didn't stop the Pentagon from sending in North American trainers to work inside the G2, to improve their technique. Same in neighboring Honduras, Battalion 316, a military death squad that in the 80s was implicated in dozens of assassinations and disappearances, trained by U.S. Army Rangers in Texas, trained by the CIA. The Nicaraguan Contras sent into Nicaragua, responsible for some 60,000 civilian deaths. General Galvin, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, said at the time that they were being deployed to go after soft targets, co-ops, farms, schools where people couldn't shoot back. In El Salvador, I had the opportunity to interview a man named General Chele Medrano, former Army Chief of Staff, former head of the National Guard, who described to me in 13 hours of taped interviews how he, working with the American Green Berets, the CIA, the State Department, established the Salvadoran death squad apparatus, first during the Kennedy, then Johnson administrations, continuing on up through the 80s and mid-90s. His account verified by dozens of other interviews. So you would actually have U.S. trainers at the Salvadoran Army General Staff. I interviewed a man named Ricardo Castro, a Salvadoran company commander, who was placed on the CIA payroll, served as a translator for one of these North American trainers, who would give instruction to people from the Treasury Police, National Guard, in interrogation techniques including electroshock torture. More recently in Haiti, a group called the FRAP, a paramilitary terrorist group, launched at the behest of the Defense Intelligence Agency. The chief of the FRAP, Emmanuel Constant, carried on the payroll of the CIA as the FRAP was going into Cité Soleil in Port-au-Prince, setting it on fire, abducting people like Mrs. Alert Balance, a rice seller who was a backer of the popular movement, hacking off her hand with a machete. I interviewed Constant. I interviewed the intelligence people who worked with them. It's a verified fact that he was on the CIA payroll as his group was carrying out these terrorist acts, first under Bush, then under Clinton. You know, there's talk now of impeaching President Clinton. There's talk now of bringing him to justice for matters concerning sex. If this were a civilized country, if we were part of a civilized international order, we would be discussing today President Clinton not in that light, but in the light that they're now discussing Pinochet in Spain and Britain. General Pinochet, apparently justice has just caught up with him. Just been arrested in Britain on the basis of an order from a Spanish magistrate calling him to account for the thousands of disappearances and assassinations under his command. That's a good thing. It makes sense to apply international law across borders, even to high officials. When President Bush, a number of years ago, said that Saddam Hussein should be put on trial for crimes against humanity because of what Saddam Hussein has done to the people of Iraq and Kuwait, I agree. It's a good idea. But if you're going to talk about applying international law, you have to be even-handed. You have to be fair. You have to be objective. And if you're going to say that the law should apply to Saddam Hussein, and he should not be exempt just because he's a head of state, you also have to be willing to say that it should apply to George Bush, that it should apply to Bill Clinton, that it should apply to Secretary Cohen inside the Pentagon. Secretary Cohen, earlier this year, flew into Jakarta as brave young people were coming out into the streets of Indonesia, calling for democracy, calling for freedom, as they were facing the guns of the ABRI, the Indonesian Armed Forces. U.S. trainers from the JSET program, sent out of this building, were flying in to instruct those troops in techniques including advanced sniper technique, military operations in urban terrain, air assault, sea assault, psychological operations. As this was going on, Secretary Cohen flew into Jakarta. He met with General Prabowo, one of the most notorious of the Indonesian generals, who's also the Indonesian business partner of Merrill Lynch. Went to his Kopassus headquarters, the home of the commandos who've been implicated in massacres and extrajudicial executions and tortures in occupied Timor, in West Papua, in Aceh, and patted them on the back, promising them continued U.S. training and assistance. In the Nuremberg decisions, it is stated that those to be held accountable for crimes against humanity include not just the principals, meaning those who pull the trigger, but also accomplices, including politicians or statesmen. And we all know what an accomplice is. If you give a gun to someone, they rob a gas station, they shoot the clerk, you're an accomplice. If they come back and tell you, and you give them another gun, and this happens, say, 70,000 times, as it did in Salvador, 120,000 times, as it did in Guatemala, 200,000 times, as it has in occupied East Timor, you're definitely an accomplice. That describes fairly precisely the relationship between the senior U.S. officials and atrocities on the ground. Now, this is not what the American people have chosen. You know, there are many cases in history where great atrocities have been committed with public support. Slavery in the United States. The white American public knew about it. It was fine with them. They let it go. Hitler had popular support in Germany. These things happen historically. But I believe that is not the case in the contemporary United States. It is not the case that the American public has been asked Okay, do you think it's a good idea to be giving instruction in electroshock torture? Do you think it's a good idea to be giving training in advanced sniper technique to an army that's now confronting a popular uprising for democracy in the streets? Do you think it's a good idea to be gunning down people with American M16s in front of the Santa Cruz Cemetery simply because they had the courage to stand up and ask for freedom? I think if that question were posed to most Americans, they would say no. But because of the way the American press has failed to do its job, because of the way the American political system has failed to bring these facts home to the American public, that question has not been asked. You can't be morally outraged about something you've never heard about. People are not going to be marching on the Pentagon about East Timor if they don't know the facts. But to the extent that we are able to get the facts out, to the extent that we are able to talk to people, there's a very powerful case to make. A case that I think decent Americans across political lines, this is not a matter of left or right, Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. It's not a matter of whether you're a member of the military or not, whether you're a veteran or not. Anyone who believes in certain very basic principles, we shouldn't be gunning down unarmed civilians, we shouldn't be driving people into hunger by imposing repressive regimes. Anyone who believes in that can rally behind the cause of saying enough with this policy, enough with this multi-billion-dollar paramilitary apparatus that trains people in repression. We can stop it if enough stand up. The case of East Timor is a good example. Thousands of people around the country have organized, have mobilized, put pressure on Congress, working through a bipartisan coalition. And through groups like the East Timor Action Network, we've succeeded in cutting off much of the military training and weapons sales. That has weakened the confidence of the Indonesian army. It's helped, to some extent, the people who are now out in the streets in Jakarta, now out in the streets in Dili, risking their lives, and actually having a real chance for winning their freedom within the coming months. Right now, there are bills in the Congress which you can support. A measure, H.R. 3802 by Representative Lowy, to ban all military training to regimes like the Indonesian ABRI regime. H.R. 3918 by Representative McKinney to cut off the weapons, spare parts, ammunition. H.R. 258 by Representative Lowy and many others to endorse self-determination, a free election for East Timor. You can hook up with groups like the East Timor Action Network, which you can reach at 914-428-7299. That's 914-428-7299. You can hook up with groups like the School of the Americas Watch, which this November is going to return to Fort Benning, say, we don't want to be training a new generation of repressive forces. Before it was Salvador. Now it's troops coming up from Mexico, from Colombia, from elsewhere, where the next wave of paramilitary repression is being prepared. People at the other end of the M16 in places like Haiti, East Timor, Indonesia, they're doing all they can. They risk their lives when they stand up. They risk their families. But they can't demonstrate on the streets of the United States. They can't vote in American elections. They can't pressure American corporations. They can't reach out to people in this country and say, do you know what's being done in your name, really? Do you know what's really being done with your tax dollars? If we pose that question to enough Americans, I think we'll get a powerful answer back. An answer that can shake this building and lift some of those M16s from the heads of people in so many countries abroad. So thanks for coming out. Also, finally, if any of you are interested in hooking up with a new group that we're trying to get off the ground that would complement the work of the existing groups and try to mobilize new constituents beyond the existing activists, people like veterans, people like immigrants and refugees from countries where the U.S. has backed repression, workers and communities endangered by capital flight, with the factories shut down and head off to places like Indonesia and Haiti in search of more repressed labor forces. Please, there's a group called Justice for All, just getting going. If you're interested in this, you can contact Justice for All at Box 20363, New York, New York 10025. That's Box 20363, New York, New York 10025. It's a very simple question. It's a pocketbook issue because this undermines jobs and communities when you back repression, especially labor repression overseas, and it's a moral issue. It's a matter of simple decency. It's something that decent people everywhere, including any who might happen to work inside this building, including any in military bases, if you don't believe in gunning down people who speak for justice and speak for freedom, if you think the U.S. should get out of their way, take the M16s away from them, then stand up and say so and we can stop it. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Alan Nairn. He sounds to me like he's telling us how our tax dollars have been working for us, right? Well, sounds like we need a revolution. What do you think? We have a request for him to repeat the names of the organizations and the ways to contact. Alan?
Okay, I guess the plane was going over. For the East Timor Action Network, the phone number is 914-428-7299. That's 914-428-7299. And for the Justice for All group, Box 20363, New York, New York 10025. Thank you.
Okay, and now to talk to us about revolution, nonviolently, of course, is Devin, who is a young poet, songwriter, singer from the Twin Oaks community in Virginia. Let's listen and join along with Devin with Revolution.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks. It's a big old microphone. Can they hear me? Can y'all hear me? Hear my feedback. Oh, there it is. Ha! So I was just playing up there. Ooh. My seat's buzzing. I was just playing up there on that wall. It was pretty exciting. I know. Yeah, it was all right. But I was gonna play the same song that I played up there. Is this gonna keep on doing this while I'm playing? Do you think? Okay. This is a Tracy Chapman song. It's called "Talking About a Revolution." What y'all think of revolution? You think so? Come on now. A little bit of smiles or something, maybe. Can you hear my guitar all right? Ow, guitar. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a big yell while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, ha ha ha. Poor people gonna rise up and get their share. Oh, don't you know you better run, 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 run. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Don't you know you better run, 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 run. Talking about a revolution, yeah. Because finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution, oh yeah. Because finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution, oh, while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment line, sitting around
waiting for a promotion, don't you know? Talking about a revolution, it sounds like a big yeah. Yeah. Everybody get ready to run. Don't you better run, 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 run. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Don't you better run, 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 run. Talking about a revolution, holding on. Talking about a revolution, holding on. Talking about a revolution, holding on. Oh, the sun is right in my eyes. Thank you. So I was thinking, Paxis was like, "You want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to play." But like, whew. I've only written like a few songs. Obviously, that wasn't mine. And I must admit, a lot of them are kind of like self-obsessed, like I'm doing this, I'm doing that, as opposed to like we're revolutionary, blah blah blah. So I was trying to think of like, there's a song I really like by Gillian Welch. That right on. I don't even know what like it's released on, but it's called Patiently Waiting. It doesn't really have to do with it, but like the concept, like patiently waiting. Like, shut up! Anyways, it's about being finished patiently waiting. Thought that was kind of appropriate, because like, we don't really want to wait around. And we're certainly not patient, are we? No, no, no. Well, nothing new has passed this way in a long time. Maybe nothing's ever gonna come. And nothing seems to grow outside my window. I guess I better go and get me some. Well, I wanna get some of the gold in the hills that's making people nervous. You know, they get scared of the cold and the chill, start praying God preserve us. I can't believe how long I've stayed. 2 more days till I get paid, and I find that small town boy I'm dating. Tell him I'm done patient waiting. Whoa, whoa, I'm done patient waiting. Oh yeah. Well, I've had fun just holding hands at the movie show, and I spent good times tearing up the town. Oh, but I spent cold nights waiting out front of the movie show, thinking half the hands that held me down. Well, I wanna get some of the gold in the hills that's making people nervous. You know, they get scared of the cold and the chill, start praying God preserve us. I can't believe how long I stayed. 2 more days till I get paid, and I find that small town boy I'm dating. Tell him I'm done patient waiting. Whoa, whoa, I'm done patient waiting. Oh yeah. Oh, oh, oh. It wasn't me. Well, some folks never get their share of the sweet life, and others come around a little late. Oh, but I got this feeling sitting at a stoplight. It seems like good things come to those who hit the road when they know what they want. And I want to get some of the gold in the hills that's making people nervous. You know, they get scared of the cold and the chill, start praying God preserve us. I can't believe how long I stayed. 2 more days till I get paid, and I find that small town boy I'm dating. Tell him I'm done patient waiting. Whoa, whoa, I'm done patient waiting. Oh yeah. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah. Oh, she says that's it, so thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it. It's okay. It's fine. We have a couple of quick announcements. The sign-in sheets are currently at the food and water table. If you want us to remain in touch with you and you haven't given us your name and address, please do that now before you leave. We know that 6 to 8 people were arrested at the wall. More updates will be following. Stay tuned for additional information. And we will be making bus announcements shortly to let people know about transportation out of here. Our next speaker is from the King Mohammed Anti-Military Project. We'll be speaking about militarization in Africa, rounding out our concerns of transcontinental internationalism and anti-militarism. Please join me. Yes. Ron? Okay. There will be an announcement after the next speaker about the New York City bus. Ronnie Fellerath is the New York City coordinator. Don't bombard her with questions. We'll be making an announcement about the New York City bus in a moment. But now, please join me in welcoming Obi Egbuna.
On behalf of the Pan-African Student Youth Movement, we wish to thank the War Resisters League, and we salute you in your 75th anniversary as you come together today to deal with this initiative entitled A Day Without the Pentagon. The children, the sons and daughters of Africa are no strangers to the Pentagon and no strangers to U.S. militarism at all. Those of you who know the Pentagon and understand the Pentagon's focus know about the Joint Cultural Exchange Training Program, where the Pentagon is going into Africa to intensify the U.S. military presence in Africa, as though we haven't had enough of puppets in Africa as a result of this. We can take a look starting in 1990. In Liberia, the Doe government was overthrown, a military government that got U.S. dollars. We can take a look at the government in Nigeria of Babangida, that got U.S. dollars. We can take a look at the government of Saeed Barre in Somalia, that between 1968 and 1990 was financed by the U.S. It is always interesting to focus on the Pentagon and focus on what is called foreign policy, because when you focus on this, you recognize that the Democrats and Republicans are the same. Because when Bill Clinton bombed Sudan and bombed Afghanistan, the first person to praise him was Newt Gingrich. So when you come to focus on domestic policy, sometimes they make you think they're different because their tactics are different. But when you take a look at the way they treat the continent of Africa, you see that their objectives are the same. When we come to take a look at the fact that most of the dictators in all of the dictators in Africa, as they attempt to orchestrate a facelift, they want to take us from military neocolonialism to civilian neocolonialism, where we trade in these leaders that are brutal. And when you take a look at the picture of Africa, you don't only focus on the military regimes, take a look at the military mercenary outfits like UNITA in Angola, Renamo in Mozambique, all as a result of Pentagon programming just like this. And it also makes you focus on something else. It is not the chemical weapons being produced in Iraq and Libya that are the biggest threat to human existence. It is not the nuclear weapons in Pakistan and India that are a threat to human existence. But in all actuality, it is the $268 billion that the U.S. and the Pentagon put towards militarism that is the biggest threat to humanity today. All of the time we have to focus on United States militarism and make sure that this is properly understood. This is why in the African community we say we have launched this King Mohammed anti-military project. You understand why we choose those symbols, and you understand that there's no contradiction. Today they want to reduce Martin Luther King to voter registration drives and the March on Washington in 1963. And this means that when you focus on, and now it's even in vogue for people to intellectually make the announcement that his most militant work was against the Vietnam War. But if we don't continue that work, the best tribute you can pay to one is to continue their work. We picked Elijah Muhammad for the same reason. He's been reduced to his conflict with Malcolm X. But those of you who know the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad know during World War II, he went to jail, and the position that the Nation of Islam took was not the pacifist position of just dealing with the morality of war, but they said that no Africans should fight for the war because American military was the devil. And that still is the position we take today in the African community. We also understand that when we come to deal with the way they want to deal with Africa, We recognize that they have a trail of blood. We look at Bukasa in the Central African Republic. We look at all of the spending. We take a look at all of the people who want to talk about that America has yet to have a stable health budget. They want to deal with the question that America doesn't have a stable programs for education. All of the money lies within militarism. All of the money lies within the budget. We recognize that through this project is going to allow us to pay attention to the Stop the Violence movement in the African community. When we talk about that, they want us to confine it to domestic issues, make us think that Africa is foreign to us. But when they come to deal with foreign policy, we recognize what goes on in Somalia is not foreign to us. What goes on in Nigeria is not foreign to us. What goes on in Haiti is not foreign to us. Where Africans face the threat of a military presence, we know our human existence is in danger automatically. We also recognize and congratulate you that you wish to do this during a Democratic administration. And you're dealing with a president like Bill Clinton, whose political fantasy is to replace John F. Kennedy as the ultimate liberal. And as a result of paying attention to that, we know that as they talk about, they like to vilify certain people. They want to vilify the government of Cuba. When this is the 7th year in a row that in the United Nations, the vote was 157-2, and they talked about the fact that they're not going to uplift the embargo against Cuba. You still see hostile policies. People can't even travel where they wish. Africans have always been persecuted for their travels, from the days of Robeson to Du Bois to Communist China. When Kwame Ture was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee's national chair and had his passport seized. Minister Louis Farrakhan was persecuted for his World Friendship Tour. We see this everywhere. That is why youth organizations in the African community must come together, must form coalitions with other people, and defy these travel bans and go where we want. We pay attention to the question of the military bases, and that is why we once again wanted to focus on this joint cultural exchange training program and the militarism that it creates. The fact that they now want to also use the banner of multi-party democracy to ensure that they have a presence in Africa all of the time. So even though they want to change the leaders from having camouflage to Brooks Brothers suits, working more along the angle of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, they still want to make sure that they're not ready to dismiss militarism. You now have Colin Powell, the ultimate Buffalo Soldier, not only recruiting Africans to fight in the military in the United States, he wants them to fight in the British military. He wants them to fight in the Italian military. He wants them to fight in the German military and be African Nazis. But when we pay attention to that, we recognize that it is our responsibility to make sure that no more African youth go into the military at all. And then from there, we deal with military bases. We deal with military policy. We're going to go into the prisons inside our community with this project. We're targeting African men and women who are incarcerated for murder. And we want to know if they have any relatives who killed in military combat. And if they have, they will pose a question to them. You killed for drugs. We killed for drugs. We killed in the prostitution racket. We killed in the numbers racket. You've killed for oil. You've killed for gold. You've killed for diamonds. You've killed for the natural resources of the earth. What makes your murder any more different than ours? And we will use that as a platform to challenge the Buffalo Soldiers in our community, to challenge those who promote the Tuskegee Airmen, and create a climate for us to think that militarism is a legit option to human life. We also want to launch a Break the Silence campaign, where it will give us a chance to go to the African churches, those who have a history of practicing the social gospel, go inside of the mosques in our community, and those who recognize that just because they embrace Islam, they're automatically a target of U.S. military policy. We also want to use this because we recognize that some of the most atrocious military acts have been committed in the name of religion, and as they talk about all of these countries that are threats to a military resistance, the biggest military state is the Zionist state of Israel, also financed by America, also financed by the U.S. As a result of that, we say that we are going to intensify our efforts in the African community, and we are simply here today to tell you we stand in solidarity with you, and we encourage you to continue to take positions against the military. We encourage you to continue to raise the question of how they get the budgeting, and we will take care of the rest. because we recognize as Africans we are always at the forefront and always take the most militant positions on some of these most critical questions anyway. We recognize that as a result of that also, they want to make you think about, we have to show just how much money the U.S. has given to some of these treacherous regimes, because we can make sure that they aren't able to wipe away their trail of blood. And as we show the ones in Africa, we encourage our brothers in Latin America and sisters in Latin America to show the money they gave to Pinochet, to show the money they gave to Somoza, to show the money they gave to Batista. We encourage our brothers and sisters in Guatemala to do the same thing. We encourage our brothers and sisters in Asia to show the money they gave to Kim Jong-sam, to show the money they gave to the Kuomintang in China, to show the money they have given to all of these reactionary regimes. So as they try to make scapegoats out of regimes like Pol Pot's regime in Cambodia and any others they can choose, we can show that the most treacherous regimes have U.S. stamp and approval all over them.
It's disgusting.
In conclusion, once again, we want to salute you for your resistance today, and we feel that this climate will bring about one unified African people, one unified socialist Africa. Thank you very much.
I have an arrest update. 9 members of resistance in Brooklyn and 2 members of the Westpac affinity group were arrested moments ago blocking the Pentagon driveway in solidarity with Puerto Rican political prisoners.
More!
Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of energy left. I know that I right now am pretty tired. The call to action for this event started out by saying, we're tired of being told by the politicians, Democrats and Republicans, that to rescue the federal budget, social programs must be cut. We don't believe them. We're tired of being told that nothing can be done about unemployment and poverty, racism and illiteracy, homelessness and hunger. We say that's a lie. We're tired of seeing the obscene funding of the